Could it be? But me, your man, Louie T. Or, actually, welcome all my fellow Washington brethren and sister. I am your man and resident Washington football team fan, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on the Washington Football Report Live. Couple of items to get to tonight. Knee deep in this draft thing. And we broke down the linebacker position last night. We're going to talk more about that position tonight. Obviously, one of our bigger needs this offseason. Free agency right around the corner. Yesterday marked the 2-week mark away from free agency getting underway. The tampering period begins on March 15th. The actual day that players can start to put ink to paper is the 17th, which is a Wednesday. So it's 2 weeks from yesterday. So it'll be here before you know it, is essentially what I'm trying to get after. And so I want to focus on free agency a little bit more tonight. Talk about Washington, where they sit in the free agency game, what they ultimately need to be after, how they should attack free agency. We're seeing players being released. There'll be more players. I think next week will be when we really start to see teams going above and beyond the call of duty to try to get under the new cap, which is set around $180 to $181 million. And so we've already seen teams kind of floating out there what they're going to do with some of these players, like a Golden Tate in New York for the Giants. Kyle Van Noy technically has not been released. So I think a lot of fans who have been asking me, hey, Van Noy's available. What do you think? He's actually technically not available. The Dolphins haven't released him yet. Now, they're going to release him if they can't find a trade partner. And I know a lot of you are saying, well, what's the point of trading for him if you know that they're going to release him? Well, the reason behind trading for a player when you know they're going to be released is that you don't want to have to jockey with other teams for that guy's services. Instead of having to bid on a player with 3 or 4 different teams involved. Oh, man. You gotta love it. Fire alarms. At least we know they work. Anyway, so you could trade for Kyle Van Noy. But I think most likely he's going to ultimately be released. And I'll tell you this much. A lot of people have asked me, do you think Kyle Van Noy is a great fit in Washington? I'll just tell you, at the end of the day, anything's an upgrade over what we had last year at the middle linebacker position. So, of course, Kyle Van Noy is an upgrade. What is it going to take to get him here? And does Washington think they can do better in the draft is the real question. And we'll probably talk about that more tonight as the show progresses. But to answer the question, and I was asked this question at least 4 times between yesterday and today, what do you think about Kyle Van Noy? I think he'd be a great addition to this football team. Is that the guy that I'm after right now? No. Again, one bird in hand is better than 2 in the bush for a lot of people. I think that you can do better than Kyle Van Noy, and he's 29 years old. I think you can go out here and get you a 23 or 24-year-old young buck. You know, a young guy to come in here, much cheaper than Kyle Van Noy, much younger than Kyle Van Noy, that can come in and really infuse and inject some true athleticism and speed into this defense and not have to give up any draft capital, not have to give up a big payday to do so. So I would look towards the draft. I told you this is normally I wouldn't advise anybody that needs a linebacker to go sifting and fishing for one via the draft, because the linebacker position is usually not stocked and chocked full of players that get you excited. That's not the case this year. The draft is loaded with linebackers in the first 3 rounds, maybe even to the 4th round, you still can find some quality depth at linebacker. And depending on how they come off the board, we could get into the 4th round, maybe even a 5th round gem or two. So, much like last year, where there aren't all these workouts and you're not getting a normal draft process, you could see a player or two slip through the cracks. We were beneficiaries of that last year with our 7th round pick. Okay, Cameron Curl. He would not have been there. Ron admitted he wouldn't have been there had he had a chance to work out for teams like players normally do during the draft process. Well, you're going to have a similar situation this year that you had last year, where you're not going to get all these workouts. You're not going to get guys coming in and having these personal workouts. You're not going to get to see them up close and personal. And you're not going to, and this is even worse than last year, because at least last year there was a combine. There is no combine. There's local combines and there are pro days essentially. And so it's not the same as last year. It's even worse than last year. There's less tape on a lot of these guys. There's less exposure to them in a one-on-one setting. There's less opportunities for you to see them run, jump, and do the things you want to see them do in person. So you could see a player or two slip through the cracks, and maybe we could be the beneficiaries like we were a season ago when we got Cameron Curl in the 7th round out of Arkansas. And let me admit, I was flat out dead wrong about Cameron Curl last year in the 7th round. He turned out to be a steal, a gem, and I didn't think he was a great draft pick. If you go back and watch the video last year, I lambasted the organization for making the selection, and they saw something in him that I didn't see on tape. And that's the beauty of coaches having exposure to different things. I saw him as a free safety. I didn't like what I saw. They've used him as more of a strong safety, a big nickel. That's what he does best. So I'm not trying to defend my stupidity. I was flat out wrong. And if they're here and I don't like them, I want to be wrong. Okay? Please make me wrong. I want to be wrong because I want the best players possible here on this football team. But with that said, I'm seeing some of your comments. Somebody said, I thought that was my house with the smoke detector going off. Somebody else said, stop, drop, and roll, Lou. Somebody else said they thought it was their house as well. I apologize for that. I probably scared the hell out of some of you, depending on how loud you have your monitor up. It sure scared the hell out of me. I'm not going to lie. So if it scared me and it was my house, I'm pretty sure it scared the hell out of you as well. Let's get to a couple of these super chats real quick before we get underway tonight. I got a first one. My first one of the night is from Taqui L. Thank you for the super chat, Taqui L, who writes, crazy thought, but like Belichick, could Ron ask Kuechly out of retirement? He could ask, doesn't mean he's going to say yes. I mean, he retired for a specific reason. This wasn't a love of the game reason like it was with Calvin Johnson or Barry Sanders once upon a time. This was more along the lines of Patrick Willis retiring because, and Andrew Luck even more recently, because of health concerns, issues with, long-term health and quality of life, having to go through multiple surgeries. In the case of Luke Kuechly, it's not like Andrew Luck, who had just been through the ringer, with all the injuries and all the surgeries that he had to have in Indianapolis from the pounding he had taken. And he could ultimately come back if he feels better. His was concussion related. So there's no, okay, I feel better, I'm going to go play football now. He's had a number of concussions, the last of which was extremely scary, to the point where he's like, you know what? I've had enough. My quality of life down the road is more important. I'm going to step away from the game that I love, but it's for a reason that will benefit me and my family down the road. And so I don't see him coming out of retirement under any circumstances. And I don't blame him. Like I said, it's different than a Rob Gronkowski. He didn't retire because of concussions. He retired because he didn't feel like playing anymore and his body was beat up. He took a year off. His body felt better. Tom Brady came calling, and he's like, okay, I'll play. That's not the same situation with Luke Kuechly. He retired because of concussions. And anytime we start talking about head trauma, you want guys to walk away. We said the same thing about Jordan Reed. Unfortunately, he did not take heed to the advice he was probably given, which is, hey, hang it up. And so it continues to play. But Kuechly, I don't see him coming back and playing football, whether Ron calls him up and asks if he's still interested or not. I got another super chat. This one is from Just Andre. Just Andre writes, what at middle linebacker from this draft class fits the Washington football team the best? So I went through a bunch of the linebacker prospects, my top 7, as I do every single week with these positions. And I'm going to chop it up, and I'm going to put out those individuals so you don't have to watch the entire 2-hour video or find where it is. I'm going to chop that up and put out the individual player breakdowns tomorrow. That said, there are a couple of guys that fit that I've seen, and there's still a couple more that I would like to take a look at, but I don't know necessarily if I would be excited about some of the guys that I've got left to take a look at. That they are left to take a look at because I either don't anticipate them getting drafted early, or I don't anticipate them getting drafted at all. So I don't think there's going to be anybody that just excites me that I'm going to watch that I have left. That said, there are a few names that I'm really interested in. I talked about Zavin Collins already. I think he's an intriguing prospect and a guy that I feel like could really bring some true value to this defense. I like the fact that not only is he a linebacker and he has tremendous coverage skills, but I also like the fact that he can rush the quarterback too. So that's added value and benefit. Remember, we're down a pass rusher. If you guys haven't been keeping score at home, Ryan Kerrigan will not be back with this football team this offseason. He's going to move on to what he thinks is going to be ultimately greener pastures. So we're down a pass rusher, and I'm looking at the roster, and none of these guys, Casey Toohill or James Smith-Williams, and none of these guys get me excited. I can't speak for you. So I told you I put defensive end, I put edge rusher on the list of needs. It's down the list, obviously, because we've got our bookend starters. But once we need to go to the bench, there's really not another guy that you feel really confident in coming in to spell either Chase or Montez. So we're in a position now where I wouldn't be upset if Washington took a, first round defensive end. I know some of you would scoff at that notion and like, what the hell are we doing? But I've already talked about Montez Sweat potentially being a guy that they may or may not be able to re-sign. I don't know. We're still a ways away from having to make that decision. However, we do need help on that defensive line. Guys do get tired. They do tap out. They do want a rotation. And if you want a rotation, I don't want there to be this tremendous drop-off. I get it. Chase Young is among the best at his position in the league. So it doesn't matter who you put in. There's going to be a drop-off. I understand that. But I don't want it to be Chase Young to Casey Toohill. That's too significant of a drop-off. At least it was Chase Young to Ryan Kerrigan. I can live with that. It's still a drop-off, but, Casey Toohill, James Smith-Williams, it's a significant drop-off. I would really like them to address that this offseason to give us some depth. God forbid one of them have something happen during the season and they're out for an extended period of time. What are we going to do? So I'd like them to address that at some point. So I went off tangent. I want to bring it full circle. That's part of the reason I like Zavin Collins, is because he can give you a little something off the edge. That's not what he is, though. So I'm not trying to advocate for them taking him because he can also double as an edge rusher. But he's a blitzer. He's a guy that can get to the quarterback. So that's something that intrigues me. But for me, I think the best value for Washington ultimately may wind up being Nick Bolton, the middle linebacker out of Missouri. I think that he ultimately may give us the best bang for our buck if he's around. I could see this guy being a late first. I could see him being an early second and not even being close to being on the board when we get on the clock in the second round at 51. I could see him being long gone. But if he's available at 51, that's probably your best bang for your buck. Because at 19, I don't know if Collins is really... Again, I wouldn't have a problem if they took Collins at 19. None whatsoever. I wouldn't even bat an eye at it. But if they said, nah, a little bit too high for our liking, I don't have a problem with that either, because I do think 19 is a little high for Zavin Collins. If you have a plan to use him, if it's New England, I'd take him in a heartbeat because I know they're going to utilize him correctly. I can't be 100% sure that we would do the same. Whereas with Nick Bolton, I know he's going to come in here and he's just going to fire the cannons. He's just going to let it rip. And he can run, he can hit, he's physical, he can drop into coverage. Again, he needs work in that department. I talked about that last night. But for me, the guy that fits our scheme that I think would come in, give us an immediate shot of speed, and like an adrenaline boost of speed defensively, would be Nick Bolton. And I think he could give us the best value in this draft. But again, I think you're really being a bit wishful in your thinking if you feel like Nick Bolton's going to be available at 51. I think he's going to be gone by the time we get to 51. But that's the best middle linebacker that I've seen personally from this draft that I think fits what we want to do moving forward. So thank you for that super chat, Just Andre. Got another super chat. This one is from Santiago Tradell. Thank you for the super chat, Santiago Tradell, who writes, peace, love, and blessings, Lou. Likewise, Santiago, as always. You were wrong about Cam Sims at the beginning of last year, and I was defending Cam from the start, Lou. I was not a Cam Sims detractor as much as I was. There was so much love for him from the fan base, and I was like, why are you guys so hell-bent on him getting more snaps when he hasn't done anything? You know, that was my position. And yes, I was wrong about Cam Sims. I was wrong from the standpoint of he was a lot better than I gave him credit for, but he still was inconsistent as hell. If they said, hey, Cam, really love what you did for us, but we're going to go in a different direction, I wouldn't be mad at that. There was so many drops by Cam Sims last year, but he did also turn in one of the biggest plays of the season, a one-hander versus Pittsburgh. You know, but that's Cam Sims in a nutshell. You get the drop on the first possession versus Tampa Bay in a playoff game that really could have set the tone for that football game. You're able to hold Tom Brady and the Buccaneers to a field goal. You get the football back, and you got this young kid in there in the biggest game of his life in Taylor Heineke, and the first pass he throws early in the ball game is a deep shot down the middle of the field that's going to be a chunk play into Buccaneers territory, and he drops the damn football. That's Cam Sims, though. Hell of a catch here, big-ass drop over here. And so I still feel like we can do much better than Cam Sims, but I was wrong from the standpoint of he could play a lot better than I gave him credit for. Thank you for that super chat, Santiago Tradell. Got another one here from DMV Fan 123. DMV Fan 123 writes, Sheriff plus Darashaw equals O-line rebuilt. That is a realistic possibility. We've heard people talk about Christian Darashaw as a guy, or Darrisaw, excuse me, as a guy that could be available at 19, and Washington could be interested at 19. I continue to contend that Washington isn't as hell-bent on upgrading the offensive line as many of you and a lot of the pundits out there believe. If you're not watching this team on a week-by-week basis and really getting into the intricacies of what they've done to this roster over the last year since Ron has gotten here, then you wouldn't know. But when you just look at the roster, if you're looking at it on paper and you see Cornelius Lucas or Jaron Christian as the starter, you say, okay, they need an upgrade at left tackle. I don't think that they believe that is a big need that they have to address at 19. Now, again, if Christian Darrisaw is the best player available at 19, they may take him. But I feel like they want to go in a different direction than offensive line because I don't think they view it as the biggest need as of right now. I think they like what they got out of Cornelius Lucas. I think they want to continue to work with him. I think they feel like, Jaron Christian still has something to offer. That's depth right there, if nothing else. You've got everywhere else on the offensive line is kind of set, with the exception of, left guard. And again, we keep talking about the left tackle position as if they didn't draft Sadiq Charles last year. Again, I don't know if they view him strictly as a guard now. Like, he had his opportunity at tackle. They've moved on. He's now a left guard. That could be a realistic possibility, but if they drafted the kid to be a left tackle, I still think they want to give him a chance to be a left tackle. So I don't see them investing in a left tackle. That's just my personal belief. I could be wrong, but I still think they want to go to camp with Sadiq Charles having an opportunity to compete at left tackle, worst case scenario, because as we saw last year with Masco and company, they're going to move players around to try to figure out what pieces fit best where. I wouldn't be shocked if Sadiq Charles gets an opportunity at left tackle. They realize, not really what we're looking for. They go back to either Christian or Lucas and then slide him to left guard. Remember, Wes Schweitzer played a hell of a left guard for us last year. So I feel confident if they say, hey, Wes is the best we got at left guard. I'm cool with that. But if they say, hey, we want to try the young fella, he's much more athletically gifted, feel like he gives us a bit of athleticism and a boost and a nasty streak in the run game, even though Wes gave us a nasty streak in the run game, I'd be all for it. That would make me feel even more confident in the offensive line, knowing that if somebody goes down on the interior, I got Wes Schweitzer backing up either Sheriff or Sadiq Charles. So I don't think the offense, I said all of that to say this. If they are able to bring Sheriff back, and I think they will, I don't think that they feel like this offensive line is in peril and that it must be repaired and it must be upgraded. I think they are willing to try out the pieces that they have and kind of pour in their resources elsewhere. That's how I feel personally, but we'll see what happens. Kevin the PRF. Thank you for the super chat, my man Kev. Greatly appreciate you, who writes, I expect for the Washington football team to go all in on receiver and free agency, but what do you think of Marcus Williams? Too much of a safety logjam cap-wise? I don't think that they're going, and I've said this already, we talked about this last week in particular, that I just can't see Washington divulging what it's going to take to add another piece to a secondary that they've already spent a bunch of money and have a bunch of money tied up in. You paid, last year you paid Kendall Fuller. 2 years or 2 years before that, you paid Landon Collins. Or was it 1 year before that? I think it was 2 years before that you paid Landon Collins. And now, I think it was 1 year before that. So Collins, then Kendall Fuller, and now you might have to pay Ronald Darby some money. I just don't see them investing a lot of money into another safety. They've already got money tied up into one safety. Now you're investing into another safety. You just invested in a corner. Now you got to invest in another corner if you don't go young at that position. I just don't see them investing what it's going to take to get a young safety like Marcus Williams on the free agent market. And I talked about this last week with him. You're looking at $13 million per year for a guy like Marcus Williams. Now, again, these are all projections by Sport Rack. However, with the cap being reduced, those numbers could come down. But it's not going to come down to $9 million per year, okay? If that number comes down, maybe it comes down to 11. That's still more money than you're really looking to invest in the position. Having already paid Kendall Fuller 10 a year, Landon Collins what's 15, 16 a year, I think it was 14, something like that. And then if you bring back Darby, he's probably going to cost you every bit of 10, 11, 12 a year. I just don't see them investing in another secondary member when they feel like they can find some cheap young labor like they did last year in the draft with Cameron Curl. You know, if you believe in your evaluators, I don't think you go to that well in free agency. You got other positions that you really need to attack aggressively in free agency, like wide receiver, as you mentioned. And I think that's where they're going to focus all of their energy early on in the process. I expect Washington to go after a wide receiver fast and furious early. We're going to know about the receiver that they're going to sign prior to the actual free agency first day of the new league year getting underway. You know, that tampering period is the 15th through the 17th, and the 17th is actually the day that guys can put ink to paper. We're going to know about Washington's intent to sign said wide receiver. I believe that guy's going to ultimately be Curtis Samuel. Never, ever trust a man with two first names. And I think that we're going to know that Curtis Samuel is going to be a Washington football team member by the 15th, that Monday. I really do believe that. You know, if not Monday, definitely Tuesday, we're going to know something about the wide receiver position. I don't think this is going to be a situation where a lot of big names are gone and Washington still hasn't signed somebody. I think we're going to be in on a big name free agent wide receiver early, and I wouldn't be shocked if they doubled up and got them, and that wouldn't come early. That would be a little bit later. That would come once all of the high-priced guys are gone, and then you get to some of your bargain basement deals on the second week of free agency. That's when you'll start to hear a name like a John Ross come off the board, and I think that could be a name that maybe interests Washington as well, because if nothing else, they definitely are looking to add speed, and I think that's why Curtis Samuel is going to be the first guy on their list more likely than not. They may try to go after Allen Robinson. I don't see the Bears letting him go. I'm listening to their GM Ryan Pace speak, and it doesn't sound like they're willing to just allow Allen Robinson to walk in test free agency. So sounds like if they don't reach a long-term deal with him, they're going to slap the franchise tag on him. And so I think he'll be one of those guys that comes off of the board. And teams that were interested in Allen Robinson will have to look elsewhere, and that's when they start turning their attention to Chris Godwin, who I think is going to get the franchise tag in Tampa. So then you turn your attention to Juju Smith-Schuster, and that's when you start the bidding there. And I think Washington's just going to bypass all of that and go straight for Curtis Samuel. So we'll see what happens there. But Marcus Williams, I don't think they want to spend the kind of money that it's going to take to bring him to Washington. But we will see, obviously. Tony P56. Thank you for the super chat, Tony P56, who writes, why aren't we talking about the tight end Kyle Pitts? Because we haven't talked the tight end position yet. That's why I'm not talking about him. I can't speak for anybody else, why anybody else isn't talking about him. I think that's all anybody's talking about when you talk about the tight end position, because he's the only first-round tight end in this draft, and he's one of the top talents in this draft. So plenty of people are talking Kyle Pitts. I'm just not talking about him because I haven't gone over the tight end position quite yet. So that's why I'm not talking about him. But again, his name is definitely ringing about when you talk about the 2021 NFL draft. A lot of people have him as a top 10 pick. And unless you see a run on quarterbacks, tackles, corners, and wide receivers, and you sprinkle in maybe a linebacker or an edge rusher, he's probably going to be a top 10 pick, more likely than not. The guy's a stud, so plenty of people are talking about him. We'll talk about him eventually on this show, but I haven't gone over that position yet, which is why I haven't been discussing him at great lengths yet. But trust me, we will do that at some point. Thank you for the super chat, Tony P56. King of the North, greatly appreciate you, King of the North, who writes, we need a piping hot take from you to set the alarm off again. LOL. Who you watching across the league to get surprise cut? Anyone the Skins can use? I honestly don't know what everybody's situation is. I do have a list in front of me of the top 8 carryover cap numbers for the 2021 new league year. I'm going to give you those numbers at some point in the show tonight. We ranked number 8, which is why I stopped at 8. And I'm excited about the amount of carryover cap that we have. and I think we're going to be able to do damage with it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we do with the new regime. It's full staff now. We got a bunch of guys in there, and I want to see how they get to work and what their style is. How aggressive are they? What these contracts look like. What kind of players are they going after? Are we going to see some of the things we saw last year? Remember, we were uber aggressive early on going after Amari Cooper. That was it, essentially. A lot of our big name free agents were guys that, not necessarily other teams were all that interested. Kendall Fuller was our biggest signee last year, at a 4-year, $40 million deal. Everybody else was either 3, 2, or 1-year deals. Wes Schweitzer, I think, was one of the few 3-year deals that we signed. And everybody else was either a 2 or a 1-year deal. Logan Thomas, 2-year deal. J.D. McKissick, 2-year deal. And everybody else was pretty much a 1-year deal. Prove it. And a lot of those guys did prove it. Some did, some didn't. Cornelius Lucas was a 2-year deal, I believe. But I'm excited to see what their philosophy is in free agency. Do we get, some big names at multiple positions? Do they go attack safety? Do they attack corner? Do they attack Brandon Sheriff's deal? Do they attack the wide receiver position? And we look up and we say, whoa, we come up for air in the first 3 days of free agency, and we've come away with a big name tight end, a big name a wide receiver, and a big name safety. And I'm gasping for air because I'm out of breath because I can't believe it. Or do we just go after the receiver as we all anticipate, kind of lay low for a little while, then let the dust settle, smoke clear? I think Kyle Rudolph is the guy that should be on their radar. If I'm Washington, I'm going after him aggressively. But if I'm Kyle Rudolph, I'm looking at Washington and saying, why the hell do I want to play for your football team? You don't even have a quarterback. And I don't know if you're any good. So if I'm Kyle Rudolph, I'm looking at Seattle and I'm looking at Indianapolis and all the teams that always are looking for tight ends and saying, yeah, I'll go play with Russell Wilson in Seattle instead of going to Washington. I'll go play in Indianapolis with a stacked roster that's ready to win, even though they don't technically have a quarterback as of right now. Or they do. They traded for Carson Wentz. He could say, I'll go to Indianapolis and play with Wentz. I'm not going to Washington. They don't have a quarterback. But I'd go after him aggressively. Remember, we did the same thing last year with a aging veteran tight end in Greg Olsen. But the difference there was he had a connection to Ron Rivera. And so I think Ron wanted to have another veteran that could help instill his philosophy and mentality and help change the culture like he did with Thomas Davis. So I don't know if they would go after Kyle Rudolph. I would love to add him to the mix and then still draft a young tight end. But again, we will see. I don't really know about who's going to get cut. I know there are a number of guys out there that their name is surfaced. Marcus Mariota is one that I think is going to get cut. I gave you guys a hot take with him, and it may turn out that the Raiders are going to have to cut him before we even get anywhere remotely close to the draft. So we'll see what happens with that situation. But they're talking about moving Trent Brown. If they can move Trent Brown, I think Marcus Mariota is going to remain on the roster until the draft. If they can't move a guy like Trent Brown, I don't know if they're going to release him or not. I don't know what the numbers are if they were to just release him. Mike Mayock said, look, we're not really looking to release him at this time. But again, if you start shopping a guy, it usually, means that you're willing to trade that guy. I mean, you're willing to release that guy. Just similar to what I told you about when teams ask players to take pay cuts. It's generally because they're willing to cut you if you don't take the pay cut. If you don't want to take the pay cut, they're gonna release you. So they're probably going to move on from Trent Brown. They've already moved on from Tyrell Williams, the wide receiver. So the Raiders are trying to get underneath where they need to go to be in a healthy situation as the new league year gets underway. And we're going to see a lot more teams position themselves to get under the cap to be in a position to strike when free agency takes place. So next week should be crazy. We've heard from multiple GMs around the league saying next week's going to be a madhouse. You're going to see guys getting cut that you didn't anticipate, like, Kyle Van Noy, who technically, as I mentioned at the top of the show, not cut. But if they can't find a trade partner, they are going to cut him. Who saw that coming? The man just signed a 4-year lucrative deal last year, and he was only 1 year into it. And he played well. It's not like he was trash last year, or it was an injury-plagued season, and, he's a cancer in the locker room. He was good for them, and they're getting rid of him. You're going to see more of that around the league. Let's see if I got any more super chats. I do. Got another one from Santiago Tradell. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Santiago Tradell, the first of the night to do so, who writes, think we will have a veteran quarterback signed by the draft. I would not be surprised if we did. But my guess is no. I don't think they'll do anything unless you consider Kyle Allen a veteran, which I do anticipate them bringing him back. He's technically not under contract this year, but I expect them. He's a restricted free agent. I expect them to tender him. At worst case scenario, nobody's giving up any draft capital for Kyle Allen. So either they're going to tender him, or much like they did with Taylor Heineke, they're going to actually sign him to a contract, that keeps him in Washington for a couple of years, and give him an opportunity to compete on a really minimal deal with low risk to the organization. So in any event, I expect Kyle Allen to join the fray at some point officially. We all have assumed that he's going to be a part of it, but he actually hasn't reached a deal with Washington. He's still rehabbing, but at the end of the day, you're talking more along the lines of a Ryan Fitzpatrick or someone like that. And they could definitely be in the market for him, which to me makes little to no sense at all whatsoever. But I don't know what their thought process is right now. I would just tell you that, as I've told you numerous times, if it's not a guy with tremendous upside, or it's not a guy that's a proven commodity in this league at playing at a above average level, so a top half of the league quarterback that has shown the consistency to be able to get it done in this league, if it's not one of those two things, I'm not looking to acquire it. So if it's not Sam Darnold, or it's not Marcus Mariota, or it's not, somebody like that, then I don't really understand what you're doing here. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Don't really see the value in signing a Ryan Fitzpatrick or trading for Teddy Bridgewater. Don't see the value in that. You know what I'm saying? If they went Jameis Winston, okay, I see the upside there. I also see where the pitfalls could be. But there's tremendous upside. He was the number 1 pick in the draft for a reason. So, if they did that, I wouldn't be enthused, but I get it. It meets the criteria that I've set. But Ryan Fitzpatrick doesn't. And unless, to me, Ryan Fitzpatrick doesn't make any sense unless you're a team with a young quarterback and you need a bridge. That's not who we are. And even if we draft a young guy, we got 2 guys that know the system on the roster now. Granted, both of those guys are trying to figure it out in the league themselves. They're not looking to necessarily extend an olive branch to a young guy trying to figure it out. They're still trying to figure it out their damn selves. I get that too. But at the same time, it doesn't make any sense to bring in a Ryan Fitzpatrick. Especially if you're bringing back Kyle Allen. If you're not bringing back Kyle Allen, then a Ryan Fitzpatrick makes sense. Because then you'll have 2 quarterbacks, and then if you draft a young guy, okay, I get it. Then you let Taylor Heineke and Ryan Fitzpatrick battle it out, and and you see what happens, and the young guy learns from Fitzpatrick. I get that. But if you're bringing back Kyle Allen, which we all assume is going to take place, and you already got Taylor Heineke back, you can't bring in Fitzpatrick and draft a young quarterback. You're not keeping 4 quarterbacks. That's dumb. And I don't know if they're going to do the COVID thing with the roster like they did last year, where you can have a quarantine quarterback and you can keep a veteran on your practice squad. I don't know if they're going to do that, because then, if you've got those 4 there, theoretically speaking, Kyle Allen or Taylor Heineke could be that guy on your practice squad, or on the, be the quarantine quarterback, and you'll feel really good about that. But again, I don't see how that makes any sense. So I don't think so. But I wouldn't rule it out. To answer your question, I don't think they'll have a veteran signed. I still think that if Marcus Mariota is available, that's who they'll target and go after. And I think he'll end up on this roster one way or another. Let's see. Thank you for that super chat. Got another one here from Vincent Coe. Thank you for the super chat, Vincent Coe, who writes, let's say you have to draft a wide receiver first round. Who do you want? I haven't watched the wide receivers. You know, that's my favorite position. So I'm kind of trying to wait that thing out because when I get into the receivers, I really, really entrench myself in the receivers. And so haven't done that yet. I kind of know a lot about, you know, the top guys, but I haven't gotten into the depth of the group. And so there'll probably be 2 or 3 guys that I like that, you know, maybe a little bit further back that I think are really good values, you know, down the road. So I got to take a look at the group as a whole. But you specifically asked about first round wide receivers. You've got the 2 Alabama boys, similar to last year where there were 2 Alabama wide receivers that went in the first round. You got 2 that are going to go in the first round again this year. My guy, so you asked the question, I'll give you my answer. My guy is Ja'Marr Chase. He was my guy last year. I didn't look at him. I didn't talk about him. He's a minor, so I stayed away. I don't like looking nor talking about minors. All right. But now he's a full-grown adult, and now we can talk about him. He didn't play last year. That's fine. I don't care. The last game that I saw him in left an indelible mark on my brain, and I still see him destroying A.J. Terrell in that national championship game, tossing him around like he's a little boy. And so I know what Ja'Marr Chase is. Think he's a hell of a football player. Think he's the best wide receiver in this draft. That said, there are other guys that can provide you with some quality play. You know, Jalen Waddle, obviously Devontae Smith, your Heisman Trophy winner. I love Jalen Marshall out of LSU. Think he's a hell of a football player. There are Rashad Bateman looks like he's a ball player as well. Again, I got a lot of work to do. Kadarius Toney, I'm gaining more and more respect for his game as I continue to watch more and more tape of other players indirectly running into Kadarius Toney, whether I'm watching a player playing against Florida or I'm watching Kyle Trask. I just keep seeing number 1 pop up, making big play after big play. So my respect for Kadarius Toney is continuing to grow as the weeks pass, which is a good thing, you know, because I kind of came out, disrespected him at the beginning, told you I had tape to watch. I did preference everything that I was saying with, hey, got tape to watch, but he's probably Curtis Samuel. He's better than Curtis Samuel. He's Curtis Samuel now. Okay, so Curtis Samuel, after having 4 years of seasoning in the league, is where Kadarius Toney is stepping into the league at. Now, I think Curtis Samuel may be more explosive and dynamic from a speed standpoint. I think Kadarius Toney is really fast. I think Curtis Samuel is faster. But if you ask me who's the better route runner, you ask me who's the better wide receiver, it's Kadarius Toney. I don't think it's really close. So, because Curtis Samuel, when he came into the league, was more of an athlete. He did more things, but he wasn't great at any one thing. Whereas Kadarius Toney has carved out a niche for himself as a wide receiver, as a slot guy, but he can do multiple things. So, Ja'Marr Chase is my guy. Period. End of discussion. If I had to take one. Let's see. All right, so I got another super chat. I'm going to take that one here in a second. I want to also tell you guys tonight, much like we did last week, I've got some more linebackers that I want to get to, and we're going to do that later on in the show at the very end. So stay tuned for that. If you haven't already done so, I want to offer you the opportunity and implore you to hit the like button. All right, 86 likes. Really appreciate you guys getting it up that quickly, but it's 340 of you out there. Please hit that like button, get this thing up over 100, and see if we can't continue to grow and build it throughout the course of the night. Also, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. And also, hit that notification bell because, again, this is one of the few shows where you already know you can set your watch to it. You know you're going to get it every week, 8:30p. Whereas with everything else that comes out of this channel, it's a crapshoot sometimes. You don't know when the podcast is coming. I don't know when the podcast is coming. You don't know when I'm going to start the draft show. It's supposed to be 9 o'clock, but I'm usually so, busy with all the stuff that I'm trying to do that I usually end up having to push that back a couple of times. Whatever the case may be, I said all that to say this. Make sure you turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. So, got another one here. This one is from King of the North. Thank you for the super chat, King of the North. Greatly appreciate you. King of the North writes, oh, first of all, double up, thank you for doubling up, King of the North. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, heard 3 interesting things today. Number 1, Reuben Foster is getting very healthy. That's no surprise. He's had over a year to get the strength back into that knee and get it back to where it was prior to the injury. So that's not a surprise. 2, people compare Kadarius Toney to Percival Harvin, and it's rumored the Skins are looking at Kyle Trask in the second. Your thoughts? You know, that is a really interesting thing that you just said. Really, that's a great comment that you just made. Because number 2, people compare Kadarius Toney to Percival Harvin. Yes, that's exactly who people are comping him to, and for good reason. Obviously, the low-hanging fruit, and I love when it comes to draft time, I always tell you, when it's any time other than draft time, I hate low-hanging fruit. But during the draft period and the draft process, I love low-hanging fruit. It's easy, it's convenient, and it makes a ton of sense. You know, when we talk about these players, and we're going to talk about a couple of them tonight, and you're going to see what I'm referring to when I say this. Schools recruit the same type of athlete. The guys look similar. If you don't, if that doesn't register with you, just think about over the years, some of the players that come out of these programs and what they look like, and then guys that either preceded them or guys that came after them. It's what they do at these schools. If you think about Ohio State linebackers, they all kind of look the same. All 6'2", 6'3", 240 to 255 pounds, thick, muscular build. They all look the same. They run okay, but they don't necessarily have any one trait that jumps out and screams at you like Ryan Shazier did. He's the outlier of all those Ohio State linebackers. For the most part, all the rest of these guys look exactly the same. You look at Alabama middle linebackers. They all look the same. They all wear 32, which is a stupid number to wear if you're a middle linebacker because it makes you look ridiculous and it makes you look unathletic. But they're trying to turn it into a tradition at Alabama. And so C.J. Mosley wore it. So then after he wore it, Rashaan Evans wore it. And so after Rashaan Evans wore it, here comes Dylan Moses, who wore it now last. And so they all look the same. If you covered my ears and you said, who are you watching? And I didn't know any better. They all look the same. Same build, same athleticism, same skill set. They all kind of look the same. And when you look at athletes that teams covet and they try to recruit, Florida was one of those schools. It started with Urban Meyer. When Herb was there, he got Percival Harvin. He got the kid that was the Olympic guy. I forgot his name, but he was Rainey. All of these guys look the same, okay? Chris Rainey looked like Percival Harvin. He wasn't Percival Harvin, but he did kind of the same things. He was a hybrid running back, wide receiver, kind of do-it-all, gadget guy sort of deal. And Kadarius Toney, they try to keep those types of guys in the cupboard if they can at Florida. And he does look like Percival Harvin. And, I think he is, for me, a better route runner than Percival was coming out of Florida, but there isn't even a comparison to the playmaker that Percival was coming out of Florida. I mean, it was like almost every time he touched it, it went to the house. You know, Percival Harvin was in the backfield, and they would just toss it to him, and he'd make two guys miss, and then it's next thing you know, it's an 82-yard touchdown run. Or they throw it to him, and now it's a 77-yard catch and run for a touchdown. So Percival was way more explosive and dynamic, but the similarities definitely exist. And then the one that's the most interesting to me, because I actually gave this some thought today, and I didn't see it anywhere. I just thought I was watching film of a defensive player playing against Florida, and I'm thinking to myself, I really like Kyle Trask. I do. And I said, you know what? I wouldn't have any issues with him in Washington. I really wouldn't. And if somebody said, hey, it's going to take a second-round pick, I'd say, okay, cool. I'm willing to spend the 51st pick in the draft on Kyle Trask. I really like Kyle Trask. There's some things that he needs to do better, but I think this dude's a gamer. I think he is one of these guys that's very competitive. I think he is willing to run, even though he's not fast by any stretch of the imagination. Half the battle is having a quarterback that's willing to run. And he's a big kid. You can't teach his size. He can throw it. He's very accurate when he's got time. I was thinking this to myself today. It's funny that you bring it up because I actually like Kyle Trask. And I thought to myself, he wouldn't be a bad pick in the second round. He really wouldn't be a bad pick in the second round. So it's funny that you brought that up because I do believe that he makes a ton of sense in the second round for this football team. I really do. So it'll be interesting to see if he gains any steam as we get closer to the draft. You know how these quarterbacks get pushed up. We're not even a month out yet, and already I'm hearing Mac Jones being pushed into the top 10. So you know how this shit goes, man. I believe half of what you see, none of what you hear, even if it's spat by me, your man Louie T. You know how this goes, man. I don't have to tell you. It's lion season. Everybody's blowing smoke, and it's thick, man. I mean, you could cut it with a knife. So we could get to, you know, late March, early April, and all of a sudden we could be hearing about Kyle Trask being, you know, a guy, you know, talking up a late first rounder. Like, we see this almost every other year. Not every year, but almost every other year. When we get one of these years where it's 5 quarterbacks going in the first round, generally speaking, that last guy that's taken is taken 32nd overall. You trade back into the first round, so you get that 5th-year option on them, like the Ravens did with Lamar Jackson, like the Vikings did with Teddy Bridgewater. We see this happen very often, especially with quarterbacks. So it would not shock me in the least if someone like a New England, for instance, said, we really like Kyle Trask. And New England trades back into the first round. They've got draft capital. They've got all the picks they need to make that happen. And they say, you know what? We'll come back into the first round, trade with Tampa Bay, because we know that team drafting 32nd a lot of times, they're looking to get out. They're looking to get out of the first round. To them, there's not a big difference between the 32nd pick and the 37th or the 41st or the 44th. You know, they're cool with moving back, picking up more assets. And so they'll come out of that slot to allow you to come up and get your guy. And I think Kyle Trask could easily gain steam. Someone could look at Kyle Trask and say, you know what? 5 quarterbacks have gone already. He's going to be the 6th. I'm going to go ahead and get him. And so I can have that 5th-year option on him. I'm going to take him now at 32. I can see that happening. I don't think it's going to happen. Okay? For the record, I don't think that's going to take place. But there are a lot of people talking about Kyle Trask as a 3rd-round pick. I think he's going to get pushed up into the 2nd. Unlike last year where the only guy that went in the 2nd round as a quarterback was Jalen Hurts, and that was because of his mobility. And we didn't see another quarterback go into the 4th round after that. I think this is a year where you're going to see a quarterback like Kyle Trask, and maybe even, you know, a quarterback like Sam Ehlinger or Kellen Mond go in the third round. Like, I don't think you're going to go with one quarterback day 2 and that's it. I think you're going to see multiple quarterbacks going potentially in day number 2. And I think Kyle Trask has the ability to be one of those guys. Thank you for that super chat, King of the North. Got another super chat here from Lorenzo Simpson. Thank you for the super chat, Zoe. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, heard rumblings of signing Trent back. Thoughts? That was one of the questions as you saw the artwork for the show that I was going to ask tonight. Perfect segue. Let's go ahead and introduce that. I was going to say to you guys, and I really want to hear from you guys, whether you do it in the comment section or you super chat it or you wait till the video's over and comment, whatever the case may be. What do you guys think of bringing Trent Williams back? How do you feel about this? Are you on the fence about it? Is it too much money? So reportedly, let me kind of lay the foundation of where this discussion started. I'm behind on the Kevin Sheehan Show podcast. So if you are an avid listener like me, I didn't hear it. I didn't hear this episode. I'm like 3 months behind. Okay, I'm the last episode that I listened to the episode that I'm on is the week of the in between the Super Bowl. So this is the week after the championship games. That's how far behind I am. So I'm still in January. So I'm way behind. See, but obviously I'm not oblivious to the things that are happening around me. And so apparently Chris Cooley on Kevin Sheehan's show brought up that Trent Williams is a possibility back in Washington, to which Kevin replied, "Are you serious?" Like, kind of incredulously, like, no way. You're like, Dan Snyder's never going to allow that. Dan's not going to have that. And to which Chris Cooley replied, why not? Like, they share a common enemy. The guy that Trent, and if you remember, and I remember this very vividly, when Trent came back that first day and he held the press conference at his locker, he was very measured in how he attacked the organization. And really, public enemy number one was Bruce Allen. And even when he was pressed on Dan, he said, I don't have any problems with Dan. Dan's not the issue. I have a great relationship with Dan. Now, I remember him later on saying he didn't like the way that, Dan didn't stand up for him. And there were some, there was a little bit of friction, but there was never any animosity, true animosity between Dan and Trent. And Trent even went on to say, I would love it if Washington would have me in their Ring of Fame one day. So he was even still holding out hope that there would be a return, even post-career, to celebrate his career here in Washington. So I said all of that to say this. I side with Chris Cooley from the standpoint of it's not impossible. It's not this situation where bridges have been burned and there's no way back to Washington for Trent Williams. He's got friends here. He's probably got property still in Washington. I imagine that there may be some family members here from when he was living here. And there's still ties to the community in Washington. I can tell you this. I don't really know what the dynamic is between Trent and Ron Rivera, and that is very important because I don't think things got off to a great start between those two. Trent felt disrespected that he wasn't the first phone call that Ron made or the first interview set up. Remember, Ron talked to Greg Olsen before he even thought about talking to Trent Williams, and that really rubbed Trent the wrong way. Bottom line is, I don't think any of that is going to come into play. I think ultimately what's going to determine what Washington does there is the money. You got to pay Brandon Sheriff, and then you're going to turn around and give Trent Williams. And right now what it's looking like is a 4-year, $80 million deal. So you're going to pay him $20 million a year. And I'm not saying that because he's not worth it. I'm just saying that because, A, it's a lot of money. B, he never played 16 games. I can't tell you. I don't think he played all 16 last year for the 49ers. He never played 16 games. And at this point, if I just talked about Christian Darrisaw being a guy that they're looking at, but potentially will bypass at 19 because they don't think their tackle position is in dire straits, then why would you go and pay $20 million per year for a guy like Trent Williams? It just doesn't make any sense. If you're going to go that route, you might as well go and draft a young guy and save yourself the cap space and get a younger, cheaper option. Again, there's the known commodity in Trent Williams. You know you're getting an all-pro caliber player. And then there's the unknown commodity of a young guy out of college that may not be able to do it at a high level. I get that. But who thinks that we're ready to win a Super Bowl next year? Not I. So again, I don't think that you're necessarily Trent Williams isn't going to put us over the top. So I don't think they're looking to upgrade with him. I'll tell you this. I don't have any problems with him coming back. If they wanted to go in that direction, I would welcome him back with open arms. I know a lot of you turned on him. Wasn't happy with the way he exited Washington, thought that he stained the organization on his way out, thought that he quit on the team. I've heard everything about Trent, and you can feel how you want to feel. I don't have any problems with that. At the end of the day, for me, I've already talked about Christian Darrisaw, and how at 19, I don't think Washington's really entertaining the thought of taking an offensive tackle that high because I don't think they feel like their offensive line is in peril like everybody else does. I think they like the depth. I think they feel like they got some quality play out of Cornelius Lucas. I think Jaron Christian did a bang-up job. I thought Lucas, to me, had the easier run down the stretch. It was like big-time, edge rusher after big-time edge rusher, it felt like early in the season for Jaron Christian. And, at times he struggled. He gave up some pressures, gave up some sacks. Some of that, I think you might be able to go back and charge some of that to Dwayne. But, he saw Chandler Jones, who was the sack leader the year previous. He saw Brandon Graham and company in week 1 against the Eagles. He saw Myles Garrett in week 3 against Cleveland. He saw some heavy hitters, man, early in the season. And I don't know that, Cornelius Lucas could say the same later on in the season when he officially took over. That's nor here nor there. I thought both of them did a quality enough job to where you're not necessarily looking to spend the 19th overall pick in the draft. So if you're not looking to spend the 19th pick in the draft, why would you be looking to sign Trent Williams? That doesn't make any sense, to me at least. So I heard the same rumblings you did, Zoe. I am firmly in the camp of our offensive line is not as bad as people think. So for me, it doesn't make any sense to bring a guy like Trent in, spend the kind of money that's going to take to bring him in, if he's not going to be around when we're ready to go through the window of opportunity that we think we may have. And again, we don't know when that's going to be, because until you have a quarterback, until you figure out that position, there really is no window of opportunity. Until you have a signal caller. You could catch lightning in a bottle like Jacksonville did back in 2017 and have a run and get it all the way to the championship game. But look where they went the very next year, back to the bottom of the division. And they haven't been back since. So essentially what I'm saying is, until you figure out the most important position, there is no window of opportunity. And so bringing Trent Williams back on what probably is going to amount to not only his biggest deal of his career, but probably the final deal of his career, depending on how he takes care of his body and how long he wants to play, and how long his body allows him to play. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense for Washington. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say about that. Got another super chat here from Calvin Krim. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, Calvin Krim, who writes, "Hey Lou, as a Washington fan, this draft feels different. I'm finding that I'd be happy with just about anyone in the first few rounds. Never could say that." What that, and Calvin, I kind of know where you're coming from there. And what that says, Calvin, is that for the first time in a long time, you don't feel pressed to have to pick any one particular position or player. Like, it feels good. Not saying that Washington's in a position where they are playing with house money, essentially. there were times where Jacksonville would stink the year before, be 4-12, and they'd be picking 5th. And I'd say, or they'd be picking 3rd or 4th, and I'd say, man, Jacksonville's loaded. They're playing with house money. Like, they don't necessarily, because they still were trying to figure out Blake Bortles, if he was the guy or not, so they didn't need quarterback. They were fine at, all the skill positions for the most part. They had all this talent because they've been drafting in the top 5 every single year, it felt like. And I told you, their general manager, Dave Caldwell, got fired this past season, not because of the picks in particular. It was because he failed at the quarterback position, and he failed at finding the right head coach. So he had to fall on the sword before they finally made the entire organizational switch. And so it wasn't because of the lack of talent. He'd been drafting well year after year after year. They just didn't have a quarterback. And again, you can have all the talent you want. You don't have any quarterback on your roster that gets it done. You're going to struggle. And they did in Jacksonville. So, I feel like for the first time in a long time, we're going to handle business in free agency. And when we get to the draft, you're going to look at the roster and you're going to say, I don't have to do anything here. It's not necessarily house money because we still got holes on this roster. Don't get it twisted. But it's not like got to have this player, got to trade up to get this guy. We could trade up to get a quarterback if they love one of those guys. I've already stated, get your guy when you feel the need to get your guy. I may not agree, but again, it's not up for me to decide. And that goes for all 32 teams in the league. Somebody may trade up and snag a guy at 31 that I got a 3rd round grade on. That's when they felt the need to get their guy. Got no problems with that. I don't agree with, you picking that guy that early, but that's what you felt like you needed to do. And if you've got an idea for that player and how he's going to fit into your scheme, well, go do your thing. So for Washington, I'm sitting there and I'm like, and I've said this on this show before, maybe last week, maybe it was the week before that. I said that we're in a position where I'm comfortable if they trade up. And honestly, it only be for like 1 or 2 players or, positions, I should say. It either be for a quarterback. I don't necessarily have one in mind in particular, but it'd be a quarterback, it'd be Kyle Pitts, or it'd be like a linebacker. If they decided they wanted to do that, got no problems with that at all whatsoever. Okay. Or even corner, if you don't re-sign Darby and they see one that's kind of falling a bit and it's right in their wheelhouse, they want to go up 4 or 5 picks to go get a guy. Cool. If we got to 17 and the guy that they wanted gets taken off the board at 17, and at that moment they decide, I want to move back. That was the best value at 19. Nothing else is worthy of us taking at 19. And there are teams calling, or they got to pick up the phone and initiate, and they want out of 19 and they're able to find somebody. I got no problems with them doing that, moving back. I got no problems with them staying at 19 and taking BPA. And if that could be a defensive end. And I know some of you would be like, what in the hell are we doing? I wouldn't have a problem with that. It could be offensive tackle. I wouldn't have a problem with that. It ain't sexy. Offensive tackle ain't sexy, but you got to do it. You got to make sure that you are feeding and watering your offensive line. So they decided, hey, we got quality play out of depth players. None of them are true starters. Let's go ahead and bolster the offensive line and get a tackle. Cool. Got no problems with that. If they decide, hey, yeah, we got Curtis Samuel in free agency. I want another wide receiver. Let's get Rashad Bateman here. Okay, cool. Now, I don't want to hear about lack of weapons in Washington. Don't want to hear that. All right? If they said, oh, you know what? We're going to take a linebacker here. Cool. Upgraded the linebacker position. They could do anything, and I would be pleased just about. Not too many things that would really piss me off. The only way I could see myself on draft day being upset at what we've done in the first round is if a guy is just falling for whatever reason, and it's not something that I feel like is going to impact this team in a negative fashion, i.e., the linebacker Michael Parsons, who's got this off the field stuff that you got to consider. And if you've done your homework and you don't like the kid and he's falling, then we may need to pass on him as well, you know. But outside of somebody like that, if somebody's falling, and I deem this guy to be a top 10, top 15 talent, and he's falling right into our lap, like in 2017, when we had, or 2018, excuse me, when we had Tremaine Edmonds fall into our lap, and we passed on him, or Derwin James fall into our lap and we passed on him. And I don't really feel bad about Derwin James because he hasn't been able to stay healthy. But I like Deron Payne. Understand me. He's talented. He's not Tremaine Edmonds. That's who I really wanted. So outside of that, I don't see me being upset. And I kind of feel like you. Like, we're in a really good spot. I want to see what they do, though. Because they could F the draft up. We could be in a really good spot and then look up at the end of 7 rounds and say, what the hell did we just do? Now, again, they may know what the hell they're doing and we may know nothing. But I remember after taking Ryan Anderson in the 2nd round, after having taken, I want to say he came in with John Allen that same draft. I was like, what the hell did we... Ryan Anderson isn't worth the 2nd round pick. I remember saying that very vividly. I remember saying that Trent Murphy wasn't worth the 2nd round pick. I remember wanting Stephon Diggs over Jamison Crowder once upon a time. Look, you don't know how these things are going to turn out, but you can F a draft up. I thought Josh Doctson was going to be good. Boy, was I wrong. Okay? You can F a draft. That was Josh Doctson in the 1st, Sua Cravens in the 2nd. You can F a draft up real quick. Really quick. It can go sideways on you. So, let's hope that they don't do that this year. All right. Got another super chat. This one is from Martin Matthews, my man, Double M. Thank you for the super chat. Who writes, hey, Lou, sorry for joining so late. No need to apologize. All you did was miss a fire alarm going off, smoke detector alarm going off. Other than that, you didn't miss anything. But what do you think about Theismann saying what he said about Heineke? He says, I think no one knows if he is a backup or a starter. And if you don't get Mariota or Darnold, what else can Washington do? Great question. Great comment. Let's pick this thing apart one at a time. So, yes, I did hear what Joe Theismann had to say about Taylor Heineke. He pretty much endorsed him and said, I don't want Washington giving up anything major for a quarterback. You already got the guy on the team. Let's give him a chance. Now, he did advocate going after, a veteran or a young guy in the draft, but he's not into trading for anybody. He's not into trading a bunch of picks for Watson or Russell Wilson and those guys aren't really feasible anyway. But I don't think he's interested in trading for, I think he's interested in trading for a Mariota, something that's going to cost you a 4th or 5th. He's not interested in trading up in the draft to get one of the young guys and giving up your first. He's like, I don't want to give up our 1st round pick. So he's adamant that he doesn't want to trade future draft capital, which it would take to move up to get a quarterback in this year's draft. He doesn't want to trade capital to go get like a Sam Darnold if the Jets are asking for a 1st or 2nd. He doesn't want to give that up for him. He's like, look, Taylor Heineke showed that he deserves a chance. I think this guy's a baller. Let's see what he's got. A lot of fans feel the same exact way. I always play devil's advocate when it comes to Taylor Heineke. I went to Old Dominion. I watched him play. I know what the guy is capable of. Okay? What I didn't know was what he was capable of at this level. Watched him in college. Watched him carve up Division II defenses. Didn't really know what he was capable of against real defenses. And then at the end of his college career, started watching him do it against Division I schools. I talked about the NC State game that we were leading in early into the second quarter on the road at NC State. But I also talked about his size. And that should give everyone pause. The guy started one game and didn't finish it healthy. That should be a cause for concern. He's got a small frame. And this league has shown that if you don't have the body to stand up to the rigors of the league, you will get chewed up and spit out. So I think we would be remiss if we went into the season with just him and Kyle Allen. I think you do need to add another guy, even if that other guy is a young guy. Whether it's a veteran or a young guy, you need to add somebody else. Like that third guy can't be Steven Montez. And I think Ron understands that, which is why he's been feverishly trying to upgrade the position. Whether it's Stafford, Darnold, Mariota, he's trying to do something. He's actively trying to do something, and I think he's going to get something done. As far as Mariota or Darnold is concerned, if Washington doesn't come up with either one of them, what are their other options? There really aren't any other options in the free agent market or the trade market to me. I mean, again, I've talked about Fitzpatrick. That doesn't make any sense to me. I know fans that are advocates of bringing Fitzpatrick to Washington. For what? He hasn't taken a single team to the postseason. You know, we make all of this hoopla about what he was doing last year with the Dolphins. They were 500 when he got benched. They were 3-3. It's not like they were, 5-1 and he got the axe. They were 3-3. He's exciting. I told you he's fun to watch, but fitty is fitty for a reason. Jameis Winston, 30 for 30. That's all I got to say. I don't really know if there's anything else you can do free agency trade-wise if you don't get one of those two guys. I think the option then becomes you got to get something in the draft. And it's really hard because I think the Mariota thing doesn't get done until the draft. So if you miss out on him and you already missed out on all the quarterbacks, you're screwed. I think Ron and company have to be prepared to go into the season, which I don't think they want to do, and I don't blame them. But I think they have to be mentally prepared that if things don't work out the way they want it to go into the season with Taylor Heineke and Kyle Allen battling it out for the starting job. I'm just telling you right now, it's not John Beck versus Rex Grossman. It's not that bad, but it ain't that damn far away either. Okay? I mean, we think that those two are fully capable in this offense. I'm talking about from the outside perspective. If I'm a Panthers fan, if I'm a Falcons fan, if I'm a Patriots fan, if I'm a Browns fan, and I'm looking from afar and you tell me you've got a quarterback battle between Kyle Allen and Taylor Heineke, two undrafted guys going into camp, and that's the best you got. There's not a young guy on the roster waiting in the wings. There isn't a veteran to save the day if this thing goes awry. This is what you got. If I'm a fan of another team looking from afar, and you tell me that's what you got going on in training camp, that's the biggest story in your training camp, I'm going to bust out laughing, and I'm going to say, man, you guys stink. Because it doesn't really matter what the talent level around that player who wins that battle looks like. I still think that guy stinks if I don't know any better. And I think Ron is like, hey, those dudes are cool. And Ron knows them better than anybody else. It's not like that was the first time he saw Taylor Heineke play in a game. He's seen Taylor Heineke play before. He's seen Kyle Allen multiple times. He knows these guys. And he still wants somebody else in there, which should tell you, probably should go out here and get something else just in case. Just in case. Thank you for that super chat, Martin Matthews. Ray M, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, Ray M, who writes, hey, Lou. What up, Ray? Says, do you see Kelvin Harmon being a factor in Scott Turner's offense? He looks like he's got something to prove, and I hope he can rebound this year. To me, he takes the Cam Sims spot. That, if you want me to be brutally honest, I talked about, me shitting on Cam Sims the last couple of years and him, coming up big for us in some spots this year. But I still think you can upgrade that position. I don't think Cam Sims was everything you guys thought he was going to be and then some. I think he was okay. But there were drops. A lot of them. And I told you, and I defended Steven Sims Jr. as well. He got a ton of drops. Okay, I'm looking to upgrade his ass too. He was undrafted just like Cam Sims was undrafted. I'm not hitching my wagon to either one of those boys. If you told me I could go get John Ross, I'd take his ass in a heartbeat. You told me I could go out here and get Curtis Samuel, even though I don't want him. I want Corey Davis. But if you told me, I got you Curtis Samuel, and I'm going to go out here and get you John Ross, or I'm going to bring back Kelvin Harmon. You got what's my man's name from last year's draft from Liberty? Shucks. Antonio Gandy Golden. And you got Gandy Golden coming back. You got Harmon coming back. I added Curtis Samuel to the mix. You got Terry. And you told me you're going to draft another young guy, which I expect them to draft another receiver, more likely than not. And you're going to roll with this new crew? Okay. I don't have to have either of the Sims boys back. Either one of them. I think Harmon is an upgrade over Cam Sims. Truly do. So, do I think he's going to be a factor? You're damn right I do. Because he's an upgrade. Oh, remember, there were times where we had Gandy Golden in the lineup. And he would play 60 snaps and have no catches. You know how hard it is to do in an NFL game? No catches. 65 snaps. And if you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't even know he was out there for that many snaps. Now, some of that is a byproduct of the quarterback not even looking his way, but it's also probably a byproduct of him not getting open too. He'll be better in year two. This offseason and him just being in the system for another year, all that stuff would be beneficial for him. Same thing for Kelvin Harmon. Even though he didn't play, he got to watch, he got to learn. I think all of these guys will be better next year. So, yeah, I do think Kelvin Harmon is going to be a big-time contributor. I was expecting that in his sophomore campaign. He goes down. I think he's going to come back stronger. I think he's got, like you said, a chip on his shoulder. He's got something to prove. And I really do believe he's going to fit into this offense and be a guy that we can rely on. I mean, do some of the dirty work, make some tough catches, block in the run game, all of that good jazz. Let's see. I think I got another super chat. And I do right here from Sonny Rawson. Thank you for the super chat, Sonny. Greatly appreciate you. Sonny Rawson writes, hey, Lou. What up, Sonny? It says, tuning in late, trying to catch up. May have missed this. Do you realistically think we will get Sheriff locked up long term? As time passes, I get more nervous. Appreciate you and the show. Appreciate you, Sonny. Thank you for the super chat. If you haven't already done so, before I answer that, please subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. Turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And also make sure you hit that like button. 155 likes, close to 400 of you in the stream right now. Would greatly appreciate it if we can get this thing up to 200 likes. Can't get to 200 without 170, so let's get there first on our way to 200. If you haven't hit the like button, please do so. I do think we're going to get him locked up. I don't think Brandon Sheriff ends up anywhere else but Washington. What they don't want to do is franchise him for a second straight year. That would be the only outcome here that would piss me off. If they said, hey, Brandon was asking for too much, we don't think he's worth what he's asking for. We love him. We want him here in the locker room. We think he's a hell of a football player. He's tough. He's gritty. He's everything you want. He's a dog up front. He's an ass kicker, but we don't think he's worth $18 million. Okay, fine. If they said, we think he's worth $18 million, every single penny of it. We love him for all the reasons I just noted. Okay, fine. Sign him to a 5-year, $92 million deal and let's move on. Okay? Get it done and let's move on. If you don't think he's worth that and that's what he's seeking and he'll get it on the open market, let him get it on the open market then. Do not franchise tag him for a second consecutive year. That's what I do not want them to do. So I do think they're going to lock him up. Much like I feel like this staff loves Brandon Sheriff or Jonathan Allen rather, and feels like he is a part of this organization moving forward, like the culture change that they're trying to set. Like Jonathan Allen epitomizes what Ron Rivera views as the type of culture he's trying to set. And everywhere coaches go, they've got core guys that fundamentally they know kind of embody everything that they want their organization and their football teams to personify. And, you know, with Ron Rivera, that was Thomas Davis. That was Luke Kuechly. You know, that was Greg Olson. There were core guys that no matter what happened, Jordan Gross was another one of those guys for him. Core guys that he knew no matter what happens, I'm going to go down with my guys. And I think he's looking to establish those guys here. And I think Jonathan Allen is one of those guys. He's a no-nonsense, no excuses, kick-ass, take names type of guy. I think Brandon Sheriff is another one of those types of guys that he feels like is a core, cornerstone type of player that you build a foundation around. So do I think they want him back long-term? Do I think they're going to figure it out? Yes, I do. I really genuinely do think they're going to hammer out a long-term deal to keep Brandon Sheriff in Washington. I think that's one of their highest priorities this offseason, and I think they're going to get it done in the nick of time before that franchise tag period comes and goes. I think they're going to have to figure it out. Obviously, you want to figure it out before then, and I think they will. I think they ultimately will figure that out. Thank you for the super chat, Sonny Rawson. Let's see. Got another super chat. This one is from my man JP. Thank you for the super chat, John Perez. My man JP writes, in my opinion, Lou, we got to go get the young QB. I've heard Fields is the guy Ron covets most and could come in and win a competition. We've heard reports that Ron reportedly is smitten with Justin Fields. Don't know how accurate that reporting is. That could be the truth. I told you, I don't believe any of it this time of the year. Everybody's blowing smoke. I can tell you this much. If they go get the young quarterback, I wouldn't have any issues with it, whether it's the first round, second round, third round. If they get a young quarterback, I'm going to be excited about it. Whether I believe in that guy or not remains to be seen, but it doesn't matter what I think. I didn't like Dwayne Haskins coming out of Ohio State, but I was excited. Once he got here, okay, he's here. What are you going to do? I got on board, and then when I saw that little 4-game streak to finish up the season, or 5 or whatever it was, where he played well, I got excited going into 2020. I was wrong. I don't like speaking for you guys out there. I thought he was going to have a big season. He was going to prove he belonged, and he didn't build upon the end of 2019. He regressed in 2020. And that could have been from a coaching change and could have been from a schematics change. There was no more Kevin O'Connell. That's nor here nor there. Bottom line is, I don't know if they're going to get a young quarterback or not, but it makes a ton of sense if they do. Because to me, if you want that window of opportunity to be open in, say, the next 2 years where you say, all right, we're ready to compete for something major, not just in the NFC, but in the conference as a whole. We want to compete. You got to get that ball rolling now. And either you're going to do it with a veteran quarterback, which I think that ship might have already sailed with Stafford going to, and I think I already said this, but I'll say it again. Stafford made a list of teams he didn't want to go to. He didn't divulge the list, but I think we might have been one of the teams on that list. Like, I don't want to go to Washington. Okay, I get that. I'm cool with that. Bottom line is, either you get the veteran and you start that clock now, which I don't think we're getting this offseason, or you get the young guy and you start that clock in about 2 years, because you still need that young guy to get experience and take his lumps. I don't expect a guy to sit out a year and then jump in here and hit the ground running like Patrick Mahomes. That's not what I'm expecting. It'd be great, but I don't anticipate that happening. So it's probably going to be more like Josh Allen. Year one, if he starts right away, and if we draft a young guy, more likely than not, if it's not Justin Fields or somebody you trade up for, it's more likely than not a guy that's going to sit out, the first half of the season until we stink and you realize you got nothing to play for, and then you put the young guy in. And even if you do that, it's not the same as a guy coming in when the games are even and you still got hope and you still got a chance, and he's playing in games that mean something. But at the end of the day, if you get the young guy and this season goes the way you want it to, which means we're competitive, he may not see the field at all. So when he finally does see the field, you may have growing pains that you have to endure. So it pushes the clock back. Whatever you do, I want this thing to be moving. In my mind, when we hired Ron, I said by 2022, I want to be competing. I want to go into the season with real expectations. Not, hey, can we find a way to backdoor our way? I want to go into the season expecting to kick somebody's ass. I want to go into the season looking to go, 11-6. I want to go into the season knowing 12-5 is a real possibility if we stay healthy and we play up to our full potential. I'm not looking to go 9-8 and barely make it in, or backdoor our way in, having to win 4 straight down the stretch just to get to 9-8 and get in, or win the division that stinks. If the division is garbage, I want to run away with it. I want to clinch it by week 13. That's what I'm trying to be. I want to be that kind of team by 2022. That was the timeline for me when Ron took the job in 2020. Was, hey, he got to come in here. He got to clean up all of the funk. I mean, the funk that was here. It was a stench that was here. Got to clean that up. Get all the guys that are dead weight out of here. Pretty much did that. Bring your guys in here that you believe in. He had to reshape the front office. Did that. Okay, now you got to find a quarterback. Haven't done that yet. The defense, much improved. Took care of that in 1 year. Thought it would take a little bit longer. Took care of that in 1 year. Defense is much better. Okay, still need an offense to complement the defense. Working on that. In progress. Gonna go get you a wide receiver in free agency. May double down and get you one in the draft as well. I think they're going to upgrade the tight end position, whether it be via free agency or the draft or both. But when we're done with this thing, this offense is going to be revamped and it's going to look a lot better. Not to mention, I think the running back position has a chance to be really, really good with the young fellas back there. And they may still go out and get another young fella. Who's to say? But it still always comes back to the quarterback position. Always comes back to, hey, man, you really want a window? You want a 4-year period where you got a legitimate shot? Gonna need that quarterback, man. So I hear what you're saying, JP. I wouldn't have any problems with it. I don't want them to force it, however. It's got to be a guy that they believe in. It's got to be a guy that they feel like fits this system. And I don't want them, and this is what I also don't want them to do. I don't want them to pick a guy that just fits Scott Turner's system. Here's why I say that. Because at some point, Scott Turner could be gone. If he is what I think he could ultimately be in this league. And I thought he did a tremendous job last year. I know some of you beg to differ. That's fine. We don't have to agree. If he is what I think he's going to ultimately evolve into, and this young guy, whomever he is, really flourishes and grows under the tutelage of Scott Turner in his offense, what do you think is going to happen eventually? He's going to get a job. I don't want them taking a guy that fits his system perfectly, and then that system is now gone, new system in, and now this guy is a fish out of water. I want them to get a guy that no matter what system he is in, he's going to flourish and thrive. Hard to do. Much easier said than done. That's not my job. That's their job, and I want them to figure it out. Thank you for that super chat, JP. Santiago Trudell, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you for tripling up. My man Santiago Trudell writes, to me, outside of Terry, all of our receivers suspect. You're not wrong. You're not wrong, which is why there should be serious consideration for an overhaul at receiver. You know how I feel about Isaiah Wright, okay? I wanted him gone probably after the second game I watched him play. I said, hey, he's a lot better than I thought he was, but he still stinks. Steven Sims was a big disappointment last year. I still believe in him, but if you told me, hey, I got something better, more shiny, okay, gimme. He's out of here. Cam Sims, I told you, he was cool, but on a team that's trying to win something, you shouldn't have Cam Sims anywhere near your top 3 options. If Cam Sims is on your team and he's your 4th option, hell yeah, I'll take Cam Sims as a 4th option. You're damn right I would. But he was our number 2 last year. You can't win with Cam Sims as your number 2. Are you crazy? So, yeah, I mean, there was really nothing outside of Terry. And we saw that in the Carolina game. Now, Dwayne was absolutely wretched. He was wretched. But there was no Terry in that game. It might have been one of the worst offensive performances we had all season, passing-wise, because we were running the football on the Panthers, and for whatever reason, Scott Turner just neglected to continue to run it. But that's nor here nor there. Obviously, there's the Rams game, especially in the second half. That was just horrendous to watch. But it was one of the worst offensive performances of the season, and until Heineke came in, that is. And it was because, I mean, the common thread there was no Terry. You know? So I'm with you. I mean, at best, they're average. At best. But again, it was year 1 for Antonio Gandy Golden. It was no Kelvin Harmon. Those guys will be back. And I think they'll be better in year 2 in a new system. Okay? Obviously, Terry's going to be back. They're going to add a wide receiver in free agency. They may draft another guy. They may add 2 wide receivers in free agency for all we know. One thing's for sure. I know that we're going to come back to the table. When we look at the offense as a whole, we're going to look and see that this offense has been revamped. And no longer is Terry having to carry the load by himself. Is Terry having to man up double teams and cloud coverage and not have anybody to take any of that burden off of his shoulders. Like, Logan Thomas can't be the other guy. He can't have 9 catches for 72 yards. Like, nobody's scared of that. Nobody's scared of a guy catching a football at 8 yards a pop. Sorry. That doesn't move the needle. So, don't worry. Reinforcements are on the way. Rob you, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Rob, you who writes. What up, Lou? What up, Rob? What's good with you, bro? Tuning in late, no doubt. It's all good. Love the hard work, fam. Much respect. Hey, I appreciate you, man. Always do. Thank you, Rob. Really do appreciate what you do for the Louie T Network. Let's see if we got any more super chats. Got another one here. This one is from Sonny Rawson. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Sonny. Greatly appreciate you, my man. Sonny Rawson writes, I have PTSD from the old regime signings and draft moves. I don't blame you. I told you we all have scars. Okay? We all have traumatic scars from what has been done to us over the last 2 decades. And if you don't have any scars, either you haven't been paying attention enough, this doesn't mean as much to you, which is fine, or you just got here. All of those reasons are fine, by the way. They're fine. But if you've been around long enough, if you've been paying attention close enough, you've got scars and they cut deep. We all got them. Now, they may be for different reasons and for different things, different triggers for everybody, but we've all got them. He says that I got to pinch myself every now and then to remember we aren't clowns anymore. Ron's plan. Look, we're not out of the woods yet. Okay. We're not out of the woods yet. We didn't just come off of a 12-4 season. We came off of a 7-9 season. So we still technically could be clownish next season. You know, this quarterback thing blows up in our face. They don't get Mariota. They don't get Darnold. They go into camp with Allen and Heineke. They stink it up, or they both get injured. And all of a sudden, we're 3-13. And oh no, we suck again. We are not out of the woods yet. You don't get to make that claim until we figure out the quarterback position. Hell, we could go 11-5 with Taylor Heineke and still, and even if we do that, and he has like an Alex Smith type feel where he's kind of just there managing the game, not really making any plays, which I don't see Heineke doing, by the way. That would be more of a Kyle Allen assessment. But whatever the case may be, it doesn't matter whom is under center. If they're kind of managing the game and we're winning with like Alex Smith type of stats and the feel to the game, I still wouldn't feel all that great about the sustainability of going, 11-6 or 12-5. We're going to need to draft a quarterback is essentially what I'm saying, or get a quarterback. Whatever route we decide to take, we're going to have to do something. But I can tell you that it doesn't feel like it did when Bruce was here. It doesn't feel like when Vinny was here. It doesn't feel like the rug is going to be pulled from underneath us right now. It doesn't feel that way. For the first time in a long time. Probably got to go all the way back to Joe 2.0. And even then, Vinny was there running around, laughing as a crony, doing stupid shit. But you knew that Joe, no matter what was going on upstairs, Joe was going to be able to overcome all of that, and he did 2 playoff trips in 4 years. You knew he was going to find a way to get it done. We're going to see if Ron can do the same thing. But we don't have to worry about a Vinny or a Bruce. Let's just hope these guys are competent at what they've been tasked to do, and they continue the momentum that was built last year from the changing of the culture and the winning the division. Let's hope they build upon that and we keep this thing going in the right direction. But I know where you're coming from, Sonny. Let's see. Got another super chat. This one is from Farrah Cody. Thank you for the super chat, Farrah Cody. Greatly appreciate you. Farrah Cody writes, the stars were Terry and Gibson. We need one more and we're good, and get Sam Darnold from the Jets. That is correct. Gibson and Terry McLaurin were your 2 best offensive players last year. I think that you would be remiss if you omitted what Logan Thomas did at tight end and what J.D. McKissick did at running back. You'd be remiss if you omitted those two. They were influential and impactful on the season, and I don't want to leave them out. But if we're talking about the two guys that teams, I told you, to me, what I felt like was the best description of our offense in the moment when it was said. And I said, this is how the rest of the league views us. And it was Mike Tomlin's description of our offense when we played the Steelers. He said, on first and second down, stop 24. Okay, Antonio Gibson. On third down, stop 41 and 17. That's your offense. He's not wrong. And when 24 went down, I was like, oh shit, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? It's not the same when it's Peyton Barber back there. J.D. McKissic's cool, but he's not a bell cow. What are we going to do? That's how the league viewed us last year. On first and second down, stop 24. Don't let him catch a swing pass. Don't let him run for 6 or 7. And then get him in the third down, find 17, and find 41. Shut those guys down. You should be fine. By the time the season was over, it didn't really change that much. First and second down, stop 24, but I think you could add in 41 to that mix. And then when you get to third down, it expanded from 17 and 41 to 17, 41, and 82. But again, 82 didn't scare you. 41 didn't scare you. J.D. McKissic, I don't think, had one single catch the entire year that went over 30 yards. And I can't recall, and I could be forgetting a screen or something that he caught, but I can't remember one J.D. McKissic getting frisky, making two dudes miss, and off to the races catch. I can't remember him ever getting loose on a wheel route up the sideline. He was open against Detroit, and Alex Smith missed him. That's the one time I remember him being wide-ass open on a wheel route or any kind of rail route up the sideline. Can anybody, correct me if I'm wrong, do you remember a J.D. McKissic 37-yard reception this season? Because Antonio Gibson had the wide receiver screen against Baltimore that went for a big chunk. But outside of that, our running backs didn't hurt anybody in the pass game with big chunk plays. It was all nickel and dimers. 3rd and 6, J.D. for 7. 3rd and 3, J.D. for 5. We had a bunch of those. So, I get it. But that's why we have to add speed, and we will. So, I don't know if just adding one more piece is enough to the offense. I think you need to add 3 more options. And you might be adding 2 more just by bringing a couple of guys back. And Antonio Gandy Golden and Kelvin Harmon, you may be adding options with them coming back. We really don't know what those guys have to offer. For all intents and purposes, last year for Antonio Gandy Golden was a redshirt year. He was a redshirt. He's a redshirt freshman this upcoming next season. For Kelvin Harmon, he's coming back into the mix, and I think he's going to be able to help. So you add in a free agent. Maybe you add another guy via the draft. Maybe you don't. You got to add at least one more difference-making tight end. Whether that's free agency or it's the draft, you cannot go in the next season with Tamarick Hemingway, and you can't go in there with Marcus Ball. No more developmental guys as your number 2 tight end. That shit's got to stop. You want to have one of those guys as your 3rd tight end? Fine. Knock yourself out. But the 2nd tight end on the roster has to be a reliable option. He has to be a guy that we can actually throw the football to. Not just a guy that comes in and the defense knows, oh, this is a run. Or we don't have to cover him. He's not catching the pass. After Logan Thomas, you'd be hard-pressed to find 10 receptions between the rest of the tight ends on the roster. That's unfathomable. When you look around the league at all these 2 tight end sets and how the tight end is becoming so prevalent around the league, you got less than 10 catches total from the rest of your tight end group after Logan Thomas? Are you kidding me? They've got to do something there. And I expect them to. If they don't, I will be disappointed. It's almost like training day. I'm not asking you. I'm telling you, if you do not get us another tight end, we have a problem. I expect them to address that. Thank you for the super chat, Farrah Cody. Got another super chat. This one is from Martin Matthews. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Double M. Greatly appreciate you. Martin Matthews, who writes, "Hey, Louie." What up, Martin? "No one is talking about backup edge rushers. I brought it up last week for the first time, or 2 weeks ago when I talked about the needs on this team. I brought it up again tonight, earlier. Okay? He says, no one is talking about backup edge rushers. With Kerrigan gone, we are left with Two-Hill, Toothless, Tutu, whatever the hell his name is. We need something." Good one. Good one. I talked about it earlier. You are echoing my exact sentiments. I said you can't be comfortable going into the season with the state of the backup defensive end situation in Washington. You can't be comfortable. Like, this isn't something we need to just gloss over like, oh, we don't have any backups, but we got Montez Sweat and Chase Young. We're straight. Remember, Chase Young did go down in the Cleveland game. Not saying that Kerrigan came in and lit it up, but at least you felt comfortable knowing, hey, Kerrigan's in. There shouldn't be, like, we shouldn't fall off the edge of the earth in terms of production. Even though it's a steep drop-off, but it's Chase Young. It's going to be a steep drop-off from just about anybody you plug in there. But that's why I said I wouldn't be shocked if they spent the 19th pick in the draft on an edge rusher. I wouldn't be shocked if they spent the 51st pick in the draft on an edge rusher. I don't think they're looking to pay somebody. Edge rushers cost a lot of money. So I don't think they're looking to pay anybody. But they definitely need some depth. And I mentioned at the top of the show, it damn sure ain't Casey Two-Hill and it ain't James Smith-Williams. That's for damn sure. If you're banking on those 2 guys to take this quantum leap in year 2, good for you. Bless your heart. I hope you're right. But you're setting yourself up for failure and disappointment. They got to do something. And I just need one guy, just one more, because I think the depth on the interior of the line, if it stays intact, is going to be so fruitful for this entire defense that it may allow you to get away with some things at defensive end where you go with a heavy rotation of Allen, Payne, and Ioannidis all in because you still got Settle and my man from Florida. Oh, shucks. I always forget his name. And it'll come to me. In the rotation. You can still go. I think you're going to have 5 viable options at defensive tackle. Caleb Brantley, that's his name. Brantley. You got 5 viable options at defensive tackle. So there could be a situation where, Montez Sweat is spent and he needs to come out. You can slide Jonathan Allen over. Deron Payne and Ioannidis all on the field and opposite of Chase Young. And, if that's your answer at defensive end because you don't have anything, I could live with that for a year. But that's not something you should be looking to do long term. I think that on the low, and I've said this, sneakily, defensive end is a low-key big need for this football team. And not anything major. We don't have to go and do anything extravagant. It just needs to be a quality guy off the bench. And this could be a 5th-round pick. But they need to invest in that position. I'm looking for a Shaq Barrett type. Like when the Broncos had DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller. They drafted Shaq Barrett, and they had Shane Ray. They invested a 1st-round pick in Shane Ray when they won the Super Bowl in 2015. That's what they had. And they had Shaq Barrett as their 4th edge rusher. Think about that. DeMarcus Ware, Von Miller, A young Shane Ray and a young Shaq Barrett, all on the same defense. That's what I'm saying. We need to draft a young guy, and it doesn't have to be in the first 4 rounds. It could be in the 5th round. It could be in the 6th round. But we need a guy. So I'm with you, Martin. You're spot on. Thank you for the super chat, Martin Matthews. Thank you. I just saw a comment from Chris Talks Washington. It says, nah, Louie T. JD had that deep catch against Carolina from Heineke. You're right, in the end zone. The little diving catch. So that was probably his biggest catch. I was more along the lines talking about, a catch and run. But that constitutes for a big play. And it was probably about 30, 40 yards on that touchdown in the end zone where he had to dive and catch it. It was our only touchdown of that game. So, yeah, that definitely counts. And you're absolutely spot on against Carolina. So thank you for that, Chris Talks Washington. I did not remember that one at all. So I wanted to bring this up, the cap situation, the rollover cap from 2020 to 2021. So 7 teams have a better rollover situation than Washington. So I'm going to throw out this scenario. The cap's going to be somewhere in here, but let's just go with $180 million that the cap is projected to be. 180, 181. I'm going to assume that the cap is 180 for easy purposes, for conveniency. For convenient purposes, because it's easy to do math with a 0. So rollover cap is exactly what it sounds like. For some of you, you're not old enough to know what rollover minutes are when you had a cell phone back in the day and you had a plan that had, 1,000 minutes on it and you only used 730. That meant you were rolling over 270 the next month. And that would add to the 1,000 that you already had. If you had a rollover plan, now you got 1,270 minutes the next month. So it's the same exact premise. The cap that you don't use from the year previous rolls over into the next year's cap. So if the cap is 180, right now the Cleveland Browns lead the league in the amount of rollover cap that they'll have moving into the 2021 cap. So they've got $29 million of rollover cap money that they didn't use in 2020 that will be added to their 2021 cap, which would bring the grand total of their cap to $209 million. So you see where we're going here? It's 180. You add the $29 million from last year's cap to give you a grand total of $209 million worth of cap space if you're the Cleveland Browns. The Jets have 28. They're second in the league. $28 million worth of rollover cap. Okay? So they would be at $208 million. The Cowboys are at $27 million. It's a very misleading number because that number isn't taking into consideration that they got to pay Dak Prescott. He's going to eat up a considerate amount of that number. Still, that's really good for the Cowboys because most years they're pressed up against the cap and they got no room to breathe. But again, Dak not having a contract, his number essentially coming off the books, puts them in that position to be at 27. He goes back onto the books because he was on a franchise tag. It's going to bring that number significantly down. The Jags, $26 million rollover would put them at 206 for the cap in 2021. They're fourth. The Eagles, another team in the division, $24 million of rollover cap dollars to put them at $204 million worth of cap space. Again, they're fifth. The reason that they're fifth is because of some of the moves that they've made. They released Deshaun Jackson. They moved on from Alshon Jeffrey. Never, ever trust a man with 2 first names. They traded Carson Wentz. All of these moves helping to alleviate some of the pressure that they were feeling on the cap And so they're in a much better position now than they were, say, a month ago. So Eagles sitting pretty with $24 million of rollover. The Patriots have $23 million of rollover cap. They've put themselves in a position to do some damage this year. We'll see if they're able to do that. They're sixth. The Broncos have $18 million of rollover cap. And that's where you find us at 8 with $17 million worth of rollover cap to put us at $197 million. Now, that's not taking into consideration Alex Smith and the cap savings we would get from him because we haven't cut Alex Smith yet. You cut Alex Smith and you'd probably be able to add, another 12. I think his number, it saves us 14, something like that. But I think it wouldn't be the full 14 that we would be able to inherit there onto the number, but it would significantly elevate where we are on this list. But that said, we know that cut is coming. So needless to say, we'll have over $200 million worth of cap space, which most teams in the league won't be able to say. So we're in a position to do some damage this upcoming offseason. We're not restricted. We're not prohibited in any form or fashion like some teams are who will be desperately trying to cut bait next week to get under the cap. We're comfortably under. We'll cut Alex Smith. That will push us even further under. And we will be in a position to spend big if we have to. Again, much like Dallas and Dak Prescott, we've got a guy that we're not, and that's why the Alex thing kind of is counterbalanced because you got to pay Brandon Sheriff. So, those two kind of, wash each other out. Now, you don't have to pay Sheriff. Alex is getting cut. You don't have to pay Sheriff. But more likely than not, I believe they will pay Brandon Sheriff. So I did want to bring that up. Alex getting cut, saving us, anywhere from $14, $15 million in there. I kept saying it was 13. It's more than 13. It's 14 or it's 15. It's something in there. It's a big savings. So it's going to really put us in a position to do all of the things that we've been talking about all offseason. It's going to put us in a position to re-sign Sheriff, go out and get a free agent wide receiver, re-sign Ronald Darby if that's what we so choose to do. If we don't go in that direction, we could go out and use that money and reallocate that to a safety and then draft a young corner. That's an option. You don't have to spend that money on Darby. You could spend it on a safety and say, you know what, we'll go get a young corner. Or we'll give Jimmy Moreland a chance to play outside. We'll draft a young corner or two, and we'll roll with it that way. But remember, it's not just Ronald Darby. It's also Fabian Moreau. So that safety net of saying, hey, if Darby's gone, we could still insert Fab Moreau or Jimmy and still have Fab Moreau. Both of those guys are gone. They're both free agents. So essentially, you would be coming back with Kendall Fuller and Jimmy Moreland, and that's pretty much it at the cornerback position. There's some other young guys that they've had on the roster, but none of those guys are impact players. So really, this year, you only saw 4 corners on the field. And primarily, it was 3 of them. It was Kendall Fuller, it was Jimmy Moreland, it was Ronald Darby. And intermittent, you got every now and again a brief flash of Fab Moreau. That was it. We were relatively healthy. You didn't see a bunch of guys. So we've definitely got to do something. I got a super chat. Want to take this real quick. It's from Rock City Posse. Thank you for the super chat, Rock City Posse, who writes, "What's up, Lou? What up, RCP?" He says, "Any word on Bryce Love? Not a single peep." Again, I wouldn't be too invested in Bryce Love at this point. I think if we get something, great. If we don't, can't miss what you never had. if I've learned nothing else from this organization, it's never get attached to something that you've never actually had. You know, we learned that with Junior Gillette. We ultimately did see Junior Gillette in a Washington uniform, but by the time we did, I don't think we got the best of Junior Gillette. We're going through that same thing and exercise with Reuben Foster, and you know, we're seeing it with Bryce Love as well. You know, you get excited for a guy that appeared to be damaged goods, but we might have gotten a deal. It's almost like you go to the grocery store and they slap that, hey, you know, save you $2 on this item right here. It was $3.99. Now it's $1.99. We trying to get rid of it. And you're like, hey, that's a deal. I'm going to pick it up. But you don't go home and use it right away. You think you got yourself a deal, and then 5 days later you go in the fridge and you're ready to use it, and it's no longer any good. And you realize, damn, I got. It's kind of how I feel about Bryce Love. We used the 4th round pick on him. He was damaged goods. We thought we got a deal. The draft slapped a $2 off sticker on him. We felt good about the purchase. We take it home and we like, you know what? I don't really want it right now, but I'm going to put it in the fridge and I'm going to get to that thing tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes, and then the day after that, and then the day after that, and the day after that, and you finally go back in the fridge. You're like, yo, I'm ready to eat that now. And you look at it, and it's like, nah, bruh. The reason they slapped that $2 off ticket on the tag is because you needed to eat that right away. You needed to consume that. You didn't. You missed your window. And with Bryce Love, I kind of feel that way. Like, maybe we missed our window with Bryce Love. You know, you get him out there, he re-aggravates it. He has to have another surgery after he had the first surgery. And then he gets out there and then it doesn't heal well. And he's having some effects after he's on it. I don't know, man. We'll see. I think he's a guy that I wouldn't be really counting on. Much like Reuben Foster. Not a guy I would be counting on for the upcoming season. Even though, unlike Foster, who isn't technically under contract, Bryce Love is, I wouldn't count on either one of those guys. Thank you for the super chat, Rock City Posse. Got another super chat. This one is from Barrett Downing. My man, hold on. Got another one here actually from my man, King of the North. Thank you for tripling up, King of the North. Greatly appreciate you, King of the North. Writes, JD scored deep versus Carolina. Heineke hit him. Yeah, I talked about that. Somebody already, Chris Talks Washington, had already informed me of that deep pass by Heineke to JD in the end zone late in that ball game. So I did forget about that one. That was, you know, him getting up the field deep. Almost felt like a broken play. But, yeah, that was probably his only deep pass of the season. But I did forget about that one. So thank you guys for the reminder. Got another super chat. This one is from Barrett Downing, my man BD. Thank you for the super chat. As always, Barrett Downing writes, great show, Lou. Looking forward to the product we put out next year. Respect. Thank you for the super chat and the support as always, BD. Greatly appreciate you. Same can be said for me. There aren't many years that I'm not looking forward to Washington football, even when I know we're going to stink. That last year with Jay Gruden, I was still looking forward to the season. I knew we were going to be trash. Talked about that all offseason. There were fans that thought I was crazy. We're not going to stink. This, that, and the third. I knew we were going to be trash. And I still was looking forward to it. I'm always looking forward to seeing the fellas take the field. I'm not going to lie. Of all the seasons that we've had in the last 7 or 8, because I mean, when you go back to the Shanahan, there were some seasons in there where it became a chore. That last season of Gruden, where he got fired 5 weeks in, and then we had to endure old man Callahan. If not for Dwayne late in that season, I don't know how those games were tolerable. I mean, it became a chore. that season. We were so bad. It was one of the worst teams I had ever seen. This organization put out on the field. And it became a chore watching. But the one saving grace we had was, hey, we got a young quarterback that's out here that we got to watch. And we had Darius Geis, so you were excited when he was healthy, you know. But we didn't have much, man, to get you excited about. So it feels good to not be in that space anymore. You know what I mean? Even if shit goes awry at the quarterback position, this defense, no matter who, and we proved that last year, no matter who is at quarterback, the defense is at least going to give us a chance. At least going to give us a shot. We may not win the game, but they ain't going to let us get our ass whooped. Thank you for that super chat, Barrett Downing. Got another one here from DMV Pride 10. An F10. My man DMV Pride 10 writes, Sup, Lou? Sup, DMV Pride? Which of these players would you pick if they fall to 19? Devontae Smith, Micah Parsons, Trey Lance. All positions of need. If they all fell and all things created equal. All things equal. Meaning they vetted Micah Parsons. They don't think that there are any off the field issues that concern them moving forward. And the playing field is level. I would probably take Trey Lance. If they felt like he fit what they want to do. And to me, and this is my personal opinion on Trey Lance. Trey Lance needs to be in an offense that fits his skill set. I don't think he transcends offense. Meaning, I think he is best suited for a ZBS. You put him in a ZBS, and I think he flourishes. Like, you stick him in Cleveland. You stick him in Minnesota. You stick him wherever ZBS is being run. The Rams. ZBS is zone blocking scheme. Zone run blocking scheme. You stick him wherever they run zone run blocking scheme. And he will flourish. That is what he is tailor-made to do. To me. So, I would have reservations about Trey Lance, but if Lance fell, you got to take quarterback, man. You can't afford to pass up. I would take Michael Parsons. That's me personally. That's top 10 talent at a position that it's hard to find that kind of talent at 19. Generally, you want one of those dudes, you're going to have to take them in the top 10. I talked about it with Luke Kuechly and Devin White. You want one of those types of athletes, one of those animals inside Patrick Willis, all of those dudes, top 10 picks. It's rare that you get a, what's my man from the Indianapolis Colts? Their middle linebacker. It's rare to get one of those dudes who you get in the second round. It can happen. And we've seen plenty of really good linebackers. I talked about the Saints middle linebacker and watching him grow, Demario Davis. And so it's hard to find. And he was a third or a fourth round pick out of Arkansas State. But it took him a little while. But Darius Leonard is the Colts middle linebacker. And he was a second round pick. I don't know where Bobby Wagner was taken, but generally speaking, you want one of those elite dudes, you usually got to get them early. To have one fall in your lap at 19, it's hard to turn that kind of guy down, personally, if you ask me. But I just sat here and talked for 30 minutes about how you got to figure out the quarterback position. So if all of those dudes were available, I would take Trey Lance just out of necessity, off of sheer principle. But if they said, look, Trey Lance doesn't fit what we want to do, I believe him, because I don't think he fits Scott Turner's offense, believe it or not. I could be wrong, but I don't think he. But maybe Scott Turner can kind of be a chameleon and kind of transform what it is he wants to do to fit around the player. He doesn't strike me as one of those guys that's gonna change it up. You know, even when he did it for Dwayne, it was just a bunch of screens and bubbles and hitches and slants. Like, he didn't get intricate and switch it up. So, I don't know. I would take Trey Lance to answer your question. Got another super chat. This one is from Fat American. Thank you for the super chat. Fat American. Thank you for the super chat, my man, Fat American. Right. Sam Darnold. That's all I've been hearing, and I'm getting sick of it. Please, no more Sam Darnold talk. He's not good, and for the love of God, I hope he doesn't come here. Now, you haven't been hearing a ton of Sam Darnold talk from me. However, I've mentioned him, did a video on him. I have mentioned him several times. I'm not a huge Sam Darnold fan. You know that. But I do acknowledge that there is talent there. And you have to take into consideration that much like this organization has been, the Jets were just as toxic. And that was not a great environment conducive to success for anyone, let alone a quarterback who needs to be nurtured properly to have success in this league. That wasn't a situation that you could put anybody in and have them coming out better because of it. So I look at Sam Darnold. I wasn't a massive Darnold fan coming out of USC, but I acknowledge that he's talented and that if he's put in the right position and situation, he may be able to flourish. And he may be much better than what we've seen. And there have been times and flashes where he has actually looked really good. So maybe that can be something that you build upon with him. But for me, I wouldn't have any issues with it as long as it's not going to require a first round pick being given up. If you told me I got to give up a second for Sam Darnold, I'd do it. I'd do it with no hesitation and see what the young fella has. But make no mistake about it, Sam Darnold is not going to come in here and be a savior right away. Like, if you go out and trade for Sam Darnold, it doesn't move Vegas's odds of Washington winning the NFC East or even winning the Super Bowl. It doesn't change it. Not like it would have changed if you went out and got Matthew Stafford with this defense. So, yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but make it known that he is talented. And if he is in the right situation, he could blossom into something that looks more like the draft capital that was spent on him and less like a guy that has been shell-shocked and seeing ghosts and making mistakes and looking like a guy that had no business being selected in the top 10 of an NFL draft. So I hear what you're saying. I definitely hear what you are saying. See if we got any more super chats. We do. Kevin the PRF. Thank you for the super chat. My man Kevin the PRF. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Kev. Greatly appreciate you. Kevin the PRF writes, did we get through this show without the big news of the week? Looking forward to those LT co-ed dance team outfits in the merch shop. It had to be you to bring that up. It had to be you. I wouldn't have it any other way, though. Let's just discuss this right now, get it out of the way. I don't want to do this again. All right. So, obviously, as Kev alluded to, Washington is going to become the first NFL organization to have co-ed cheerleading squad. A co-ed cheerleading squad. So what that means, if you're not familiar with the term co-ed, it means male and female. Okay? I said this on the show yesterday. Someone brought it up. I think it was Matthew Stansberry who brought it up and said, hey, man, look, y'all ain't got no mascot. Y'all don't have no team name. You don't have no quarterback. And now you got co-ed cheerleaders, man. What the hell is going on in Washington? I said, look, I don't know, man. Don't ask me, okay? I've been behind this 180 that this organization has done. And for whatever reason, I told you I felt like there were, motives behind everything. There was reasoning behind what Daniel Snyder was allowing people to do and doing to a lesser degree himself. The hiring of Jason Wright as the first black team president in NFL history. Hiring Julie Donaldson to be your head of communications and having her be the first in the NFL to hold that title. Hiring Jennifer King as the first black full-time assistant coach in the league. These were all moves that I felt like they did out of necessity to quell some of the racial overtones that this organization has had for the better part of 80 years with the name Redskins. Whatever. I don't subscribe to that theory, but there were people out there that did. Daniel Snyder was on the ropes. And to me, a lot of these moves were done to combat things that were going on at the time. The Redskins name and, the whole social injustice movement and everything that was going on at the time. It put the Washington organization in a corner. Daniel Snyder thought to himself, if I want to come out of this thing swinging, I need to do something big. He hires Jason Wright. You got the whole Washington Post articles coming out. Remember, there was the New York Times article about the cheerleading scandal and the mistreatment of the cheerleaders there. You then follow that up with the Washington Post article. And it's multiple articles, and it's all slandering this organization. They fire a couple of guys that were implicated in the article. They also hire Julie Donaldson not too far thereafter. There's, to me, a direct correlation, but forget about all of that. You get the cheerleading thing. They froze the cheerleading section of the organization. They froze that for a while. They kind of did away with it. They dismissed the head of the cheerleading staff, and they wanted to revamp everything. And then they come back, and this is the decision that they come back with. We're going to go with a co-ed situation. Remember, in the article, Daniel Snyder was reportedly just treating one of the workers there, one of the staff members, terribly. He used to be a cheerleader in college, and he would berate him and tell him to do flips and stupid shit that, somebody on a power trip would do, which I don't doubt. But all of a sudden, it all makes sense. But I'm like, when does this end? And I love everything that they've done. For whatever reason, I don't love the reasoning. I don't care about that. I just care about actually having significant change, which they've done. Jason Wright, Jennifer King, Julie Donaldson. I love all of it. This right here, though, is where I draw the line, and I'm saying, okay, I'm all for equality. And I'm all for everyone having an opportunity to do whatever it is they want to do. But to me, and this may come off as being harsh, and it is what it is. You can crucify me if you want, that's fine. This is a bit of a sissification of football. You come to a game, there's nothing but testosterone and a bunch of guys committing barbaric acts. And the last thing you want to do is look over to the sideline and see a guy cheering with the cheerleaders. I'm sorry. Now, it's in high school. It's in college. And look, you got guys out there with the pants and the shirt on, and they're throwing the cheerleaders in the air, and they're at the base of a a pyramid where they're holding up the chip. That's fine. Look, and that's pretty much what it's going to be if they hire a guy. I hope that's what it is. We can only assume that that's what it's going to be. It could be something totally different. Whatever the case may be, I don't like it. I don't like this. I think you went a step too far. And you didn't have to do this, but again, this falls in line with everything we've seen from this organization every step of the way. This has been their response to any kind of negative publicity and any kind of there was a word I was looking for and it escapes me at this moment. It'll pop in my head. But every time they've been attacked, they've had an answer. This is their answer to the cheerleading issue that they've had. I don't like it. Adversity. That's the word I was looking for. Had a brain fart. Every time they've had adversity with a specific issue, they've answered it with some kind of social injustice response or social equality response that makes people say, well, you're a terrible organization, but we commend you for doing that. I feel like they went a step too far this time. I feel like and I hope nobody else around the league looks at this and says, you know what, they're doing it the right way. We're going to have co-ed cheerleaders too. I hope we're the only ones. And, it is what it is. Hopefully, we don't even... First of all, who gives a shit? I don't go to the games, so it doesn't impact me. They don't show the cheerleaders on the TV very often. You might get a player run out of bounds, or you might back in the end zone and the cheerleaders may be there. But I'm not at the game, so that's not affecting me. But if you do go to the games, and I assume during timeouts or the halftime show, you see the cheerleaders, maybe that does impact you. For me, I don't give a shit. I don't care. I really don't. But I just felt like this was unnecessary. But it is what it is. So, don't worry, you won't see any LT co-ed dance merch. Oh, man. You are a fool, Kevin the PRF. I swear you are. Anyway, I got another super chat. This one is from Fat American. Thank you for doubling up. Double up. Fat American, who writes, Lou, just give it a chance. This is my chance to shine and show off my figure while wearing a skirt. Don't hate, admire. And that's what I'm talking about right there. My man, Fat American, hit it right on the head. Essentially, they're not going to let a guy come out there in a skirt, I don't think. They're going to do this in a classy manner, I hope. Now, look, one can only speculate that it's going to be a guy with a pantsuit on, and a shirt like we've seen. But it could be you could get a transsexual, or you could get someone that identifies as a female, but they're really a male, and he has a skirt on. I don't care. I'm talking more about this than I need to. I don't care. It doesn't impact me at all. It doesn't impact the team that I root for. It's just another thing that's frivolous off to the side that I have to talk about because they bring it to the forefront. And while people may be applauding them, I don't necessarily like this, but it is what it is. Oh, man. Anyhow. All right. So let's see. I got through. Kyle Van Noy. So nobody brought that up tonight. I thought somebody would bring Kyle Van Noy up. I'm looking at Kevin the PRF's comment. And look, and Walter Bonner says he does care. Look, some of you might care about this. I don't. And we all care about different things. And if this matters to you, then you have an opinion on it. Go to bat for it or go to bat against it. It's cool. But I don't, personally. But I thought somebody would bring up Kyle Van Noy. Enough of that. Nobody brought him up tonight. So, I don't know if I talked about him or not. I feel like I already did. But just to reiterate, if I didn't, Kyle Van Noy is an upgrade over Jon Bostic. And just about anybody with a name that has played well in this league is an upgrade over Jon Bostic at the middle linebacker position. So, for me, would Kyle Van Noy be able to come in and be an upgrade? Absolutely. For me, personally, whether Van Noy is deployed as a middle backer or a weak side linebacker, it doesn't really make any difference. It'd be an upgrade over what we put on the field last year. We need two linebackers. We need a Will and we need a Mike. Currently, neither one of those guys are on the roster. Starting wise, that is. Jon Bostic may be back. They signed him to an extension last offseason. I think they want Jon Bostic back. I just don't think they want him in a starting capacity. I feel the exact same way. I don't mind him being back. I just don't want him anywhere near the field in a starting capacity. That's it. That's why a guy like Lavonte David is interesting, because he's a weak side linebacker. And he could be exactly what the doctor ordered. He's 30, though. I'm good on that. But I'm interested to see what they do, because I don't think this is a one-and-done situation at linebacker. Just like at the tight end position, I don't think it's a one-and-done situation at tight end. I think you need multiple guys at both tight end and at cornerback and at linebacker. So I'm anxious to see how they go about this. Do they just try to get a couple of linebackers in the draft? Do they get a linebacker or two in free agency? Because Kevin Pierre-Louis, free agent. I don't know if they intend on re-signing him. Don't seem like something that they're really interested in doing. Remember, his snap count came way down at the end of the season. They started playing Michael Kendricks at the end of the season. So I surmise that they're going to go in a different direction. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, I digress. So with that said, I want to go and talk about the linebacker position in the draft. I talked about my top 7. I'm going to pick up where I left off yesterday with my 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th linebackers in this draft as we transition to some more linebackers in what is a deep linebacker draft class. And I want to move to my 11th linebacker in the upcoming 2011 draft. And that guy is Jamin Davis. And Jamin Davis is a guy that I had no idea who he was coming into this process. I went into this process not really having prior knowledge of a lot of these players. And he was one of the guys that I looked at in this process and said, all right, let's see what you got. Kind of undersized. Where do you fit in the grand scheme of things? And I've talked about this already. I talked about it last night. I'm going to talk about it again. The league is changing as to what is required of NFL linebackers. And Jamin Davis is a guy that, to me, epitomizes that. As we transition from his front of his card to the back of his card and take a look at what he brings to the table. So the first thing is athleticism and speed. You know, if you're 6'4" and you're 224 pounds, you're a sub 230 pound linebacker, you damn sure better be able to run. And Jamin Davis can do exactly that. He's very, very rangy, man. You look at him. I mean, just look at him. The picture that you see in front of you, you watch him. He's long, man. Pause. He's a rangy guy. His limbs extend, which opens his tackle radius. Tremendous length, which helps him. And I don't think he utilizes it as much as he should in the stack and shed department. When you've got long arms like that, you use that to your advantage to keep offensive linemen off of you so that it's easier for you to disengage. I don't even think he's gotten to that point yet where he realizes how big of a strength that could be for him. He may ultimately get there. He may not. We'll see. He's got a lot of developing to do. Closing speed. Again, his biggest trait is his athleticism and speed. That's the thing that's going to get him to the league, and his ability to adapt and adjust is going to keep him in the league. If he can do that, he'll be around, just like the guy that I'm comping him to. But, man, again, another one of these guys, you give him space and opportunity, and he's there in a heartbeat. Can find the football. You know, for a guy his size, I try to go into these things. It's hard. I'm human. I try to go into these assessments with no preconceived notions. But when I look at 6'4", 224, I'm like, man, he ain't going to work in a run game. I just got a feeling. You know, I think about the SEC, and he's in the SEC East. So I think of Georgia, and I'm like, man, they're going to run it right at this guy, and they're not going to stop. And that's exactly what they did, okay? Their running back, I think his name's Kamir White or something like that, or whatever his name is, Kamir something. He had a career day against Kentucky. And part of the reason is because they were running the football at guys like Jamin Davis. That said, he can find the ball, man. You know, it's not always pretty. Like one play I watched him, he had no idea that he was going to end up in contact with the running back. He runs to the line of scrimmage. He makes contact with an offensive lineman. That guy pushes him. He bumps into another player. And then voila, the ball carrier's there. And he's like, oh, shit, got a tackle. And he slings him down to the ground. Like, he just has a knack for finding the ball. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But even around the line of scrimmage, he can find the ball. And part of the reason he can do that is he can contort and slither through gaps. You know, when you got that kind of frame, when you're 224 pounds and you're 6'4", that means you've got this long, lanky, angular frame, as you can see. I need you to be able to turn skinny. You're already skinny. Just turn sideways and find a way to make a play on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage, and he can do that. Physical upon contact. Again, you don't really always know what you're getting yourself into. He's physical upon contact. Like, he's a guy that comes with bad intentions. Now, part of the problem is he plays a little high. So, you know, low man wins. It's a little bit harder to get low and win the leverage battle when you're 6'4". But I still want you to break down, because if you're coming up looking to make tackles and you're high, you run the risk of getting your ass ran over. And I'm not saying that's what happened on tape, but there are a lot of times where he hits a guy and it turns into a square off where he's up straight, the guy he's trying to tackle is up straight, and now, you know, it's all about who's got enough horsepower to either drive the guy back or, you know, power forward. And you don't really want to get into one of those battles when you're 224 pounds. So I'd like him to be a little bit lower, but he's physical upon contact. You know, I watched him a couple of times meet a guy in a hole, and it was a collision, man. It was a collision. He's comfortable in space and with his zone drops. That, to me, is his biggest strength right now, is that he can get into zone drops. He's comfortable in space. You can tell that he's a guy that is very adept at getting into his zone drops and keying quarterbacks' eyes. He's got a beautiful pick six against Tennessee where he's just watching the quarterback's eyes. Jarrett Garantino, who was trash, took him straight to the ball, and he had no problems picking it out of the air and then running it back 78 yards for a pick six. He had 3 picks. I watched all 3 of them in 2020. And it leads me to my final pro for him. And that's he's always around the ball. He's just always around the ball. And good things happen to those who find themselves around the football. And for me, Jamin Davis is always around the rock. And when you're around the ball, good things happen. And so I like that about him. Weaknesses, experience. We're talking about a guy that had 1 year of starting experience at Kentucky. So, he's played in 36 games. He's appeared in 36 games, but he's really only been a starter for essentially a season, maybe a season and a half. He was really the guy, this past year. He played, and what's crazy, I'm watching him. I'm watching the games. And there are possessions where he's not in. And, you see this all the time in college football where they're trying to get guys and, you get recruits and you make them promises. I'm going to get you on the field in your freshman year, or, you want guys to not enter the transfer portal. So, and, Jamin Davis may be on his way out. So you want to start grooming the next guy to take his place. And so you get those guys snaps in the game. Look, if my guy is a stud, I'm not taking him out of the game to worry about other guys getting reps. So that tells you how they felt about Jamin Davis, that he could be taken off the field. And you go 2 full possessions and he wouldn't be on the field, and then he just popped back up. So experience is a little bit of something that he's lacking. I think he needs more time to continue the season. But we'll see if he can get that or not. Size and angular frame is his next weakness. Obviously, I talked about that already. He's a tall, long, rangy guy. He's got an angular frame. That doesn't necessarily lend itself to being the most successful type of body type for the linebacker position. But in today's NFL, we're seeing that landscape change. So there is a place in the league for a Jamin Davis. And I would guess that he's going to put on weight. That I'm looking at his frame. He can definitely stand to put on, 10 to 12 more pounds of muscle and be just fine and not lose any of his speed nor athleticism. So I think that's something that can be improved upon. Give him 2 years in the league. Come back and talk to me. I bet you this kid's probably 6'4", 234, 235 or something like that, 232. Lacks decisiveness at times. This kind of goes back to my first weakness, experience. The more you've seen it, the more you've experienced it, the more film you watch, the less indecisive you are. You see it, you hit it, you go. He's not there yet. So he hesitates, and he who hesitates is last. And when you're 224 pounds, you can't hesitate. You can't afford to. You got to beat that offensive lineman. You got to beat that pulling guard. You've got to beat that lineman coming off of that double team to the spot. You can't afford to wait, or else you're going to get blocked. You're going to get pinned. You're going to get sealed. And you saw that from him at times where he just took too long to make a decision on shooting his gun. And by the time he decides, well, now here comes a guard coming off of a double team up to the second level, and he doesn't have a chance. Not adept at sorting through traffic. Not yet. He's a guy that can get caught in the wash very easily, doesn't sort through the garbage that you find yourself entangled in as a linebacker a lot of times. Once you get to the line of scrimmage, there's a lot of bodies. Some on your team, some not on your team. You've got to sift your way through that. You've got to be able to scrape your way down the line and get to the ball carrier. He's not there yet. So for me, that's something else that he'll have to continue to develop at the next level if he wants to be on the field on all 3 downs, because right now I just see him as a guy that you feel comfortable bringing in in obvious passing situations because of his coverage ability. Right now, I have him projected as a mid-round selection. I feel like he's a 5th-round pick more so than a 4th-round pick at this point. But the athleticism is definitely there. Someone could see him as a guy that they want to get their hands on, and I could see him being selected in the 4th. But he's more of a 5th-round selection for me. My comp for him is Jordan Evans, the former Oklahoma Sooner that was selected in like the 6th or 7th round a few years ago by the Cincinnati Bengals. I remember watching Jamin Davis, and first person that popped in my head was Jordan Evans. Same body type, same skill set when he came into the league. A guy that could pick off passes, great in his zone drops, fluid out in space, not necessarily the best in the run game, but not afraid by any stretch of the imagination. I see all of those qualities in Jamin Davis, and I think much like a guy like Jordan Evans, who has put on weight since he's gotten in the league. I think he's now up into his 230s. When he came into the league, he was in the 220s. I think Jamin Davis at some point is going to put on weight as well. So Jamin Davis, my 11th rated linebacker in this draft. Got a super chat. Want to take that before we move to our next linebacker. And it's from King of the North. Thank you for the super chat, King of the North, who writes, it was rumored that Kirk demanded the cheerleader program be overhauled as a part of contract negotiations. At the time, people said it had something to do with his faith, but now, I remember, I don't think that was a real thing, but I know exactly what you're talking about. I thought that was part of Bruce Allen's smear campaign to make Kirk Cousins look really petty, make him look like a guy that was the bad guy in the situation. I thought that was a Bruce Allen fabrication with the whole cheerleader thing. You know, people tried to pin it on Kirk's faith. Kirk doesn't give a damn about the cheerleaders, man. Like I didn't think that was a real thing. You'd have to ask Kirk about that. I don't know the answer to that, but if I had to guess, that was a Bruce Allen fabrication to make Kirk Cousins look bad, to make him look petty, to make him look small. Remember, he already made him look greedy. Now he was trying to make him look like he was making unreasonable demands, essentially. Anything to turn the fan base against him on the way out. So I don't believe that for 1 second that Kirk was like, if you want me back, you're going to have to overhaul the cheerleading program. There's a lot wrong there. Kirk didn't give a damn about that, honestly. It'd be one thing if he met his wife, as one of the cheerleaders, and she was telling him how bad the cheerleaders were being treated and how that a lot of things needed to change. But that wasn't the case. Like, I don't think Kirk gave a damn about the cheerleading program. I think that was something Bruce made up. As we move on to my number 10 linebacker in this draft, it is the Ohio State University linebacker, Baron Browning. This is a guy that I watched on tape along with his teammate, Pete Werner. And he, to me, is another one of these dime a dozen Ohio State linebackers. I think Pete Werner's a little bit different, which is why he's rated higher for me. Barrett Browning looks like the rest of these guys. He looks like Raekwon McMillan. He looks like the kid that was drafted last year. They all kind of look the same to me. Malik Harrison. They all kind of favor each other. You've seen one, you've seen them all in terms of these Ohio State linebackers. But I said all of that to flip his card over and take a look at why I feel the way that I do. Strengths. First thing you look at, size and build. You're talking about a 6'3", 241-pound linebacker. That's what you desire at the linebacker position. If you could draw it up, 6'3", 245 is pretty much what you're looking for, but that's not what you're going to get most times with linebackers. But that's what Ohio State covets. That's what they look to recruit, are the guys that either come in as grown men or they have the body type to fill out and become a grown man. They might come to campus as a 225-pound linebacker by the time they leave, they're 245 pounds. and they look like a grown man, and they're chiseled, and they're physical specimen. Barrett Browning kind of fits that description. Athleticism. He's not a speed demon by any stretch of the imagination, but he's a good athlete. You know, he can move. And it kind of lends itself to the next pro, which is closing speed. And I think about the Alabama national championship game where he forces the fumble of Mac Jones. You give this guy a runway, clear for takeoff, nobody in front of him, he can close the distance very quickly. And I like him as a blitzer. They did a little bit of that at Ohio State. I thought they should have done a little bit more of that with him because he's his best at the line of scrimmage. I thought they asked him to drop into coverage a little bit too often for my liking. We'll get to that a little bit later on. But his closing speed, you see it. And on a play like the one against Alabama in the national championship game where he gets the sack and forces the fumble of Mac Jones early in that ball game, you see the closing speed of one Baron Browning. Physicality. Man, is this guy physical? You know, one of his best attributes is just his sheer physicality. He's a guy that comes with bad intentions. I'm watching him drop into coverage against Indiana, and they've got a shallow cross coming in his direction. The receiver doesn't see him coming, and he just mollywops him. I mean, knocks him, separates him from ball. It was a brutal hit, and it's what he brings to the table. You know, he's just a physical football player, and I love it. Explodes through contact, kind of piggybacking off of what I just mentioned. That's what he brings to the table. You know, just a level of physicality that when he hits somebody, he explodes through contact. Tackling prowess. To me, the physicality, the tackling ability, these are all the best attributes that Baron Browning has to offer. And while those are great attributes to have, it also speaks to some of his limitations, which we'll get to in a little bit. Blitzing capability. I talked about the hit on Mac Jones and wanting to see him blitz a little bit more. I thought he was more of a blitzer in 2019. When I watched him in 2019, I thought they utilized him a little bit more effectively. And it's a lot easier to blitz and hit home when the offense is more concerned with triple teaming Chase Young than they were in 2020 when he didn't exist. But I thought he was a lot more effective as a blitzer in 2019. But again, as I just mentioned, there was a reason behind that. And there's a reason that you go from 5 sacks in 2019 to just 1 sack in 2020. But some of that, too, was they weren't asking him to blitz as much. They were asking him to drop a little bit more. And I didn't think that was to his strength. I thought that was a bit to his detriment. Didn't get lost in the sea of Ohio State linebackers. This is something that I talk about with teams and universities that recruit so well, like Ohio State, like Alabama, you know, like Clemson, not necessarily Clemson, but LSU. You know, these are places where you go and the intent is to play early, but you get there and there are 2 upperclassmen that are just studs that are going to be drafted. And so you got to wait your turn. And then a young incoming freshman comes in and he's better than you too. And all of a sudden you're fighting to get on the field and you could easily transfer if you're not mentally tough enough. What that does is it breeds competition, but it also breeds an inner toughness. And for you to be able to stave off guys or just outlast what is being put in front of you. I mean, you think about the litany of Ohio State linebackers that have been drafted in the last 5 years or so. Talked about Malik Harrison being drafted last year. You're going to see Pete Werner drafted this year. Barrett Browning's going to be drafted. They got another kid at Ohio State that's going to be drafted this year potentially, or undrafted. He'll be in somebody's camp. That's for damn sure. You know, you think about Baker that was drafted a couple of years ago. You think about Raekwon McMillan, who was drafted a couple of years ago. And so the list goes on and on and on with these Ohio State linebackers. They just keep coming. And so you got to find a way on the field and find a way to keep your spot. And he was able to do that over a 4-year period. Weaknesses. Short area quickness. Don't think that's something he excels at, and that's why I don't like him in coverage very often. I'll double down on that. He doesn't have a great feel for space. He's one of those guys, at the combine, they have the 90-degree angle drill for linebackers where you get the guy with the football and he snaps the ball and he's telling you to backpedal and they tell you don't look back and they tell you don't look down. Keep your eyes up because they don't want you having to look to where you're going. Have a feel for the space around you, knowing where you are in relation to the receivers and the sidelines and where you are on the field, knowing down and distance. Be comfortable in knowing that I'm taking this 90-degree angle. I can look behind me to see where the receiver may be on the play. If I've got 2 on my side, where's the 2? Where's the 1? Is 3 entering my zone? Like, these are things that you can't see if you're looking back to run to a spot, which is what he does. He's mugging the B gap. He's standing up as a rusher on the outside, and he looks like he's coming, and then he turns around and sprints to a spot, and then he turns around and he's looking at the quarterback. That's trash. Because if one on your side is running a slant and you have no idea the quarterback's taking a 3-step drop, or if most in college football quarterbacks are in the gun or in the pistol, and so they're not even taking a step. It's plant, hitch, throw. And you're turning around running to get to a spot. You have no idea that slant's coming your way to make a play. So he doesn't have a great feel for space. His consistency, to me, is a bit off-putting because you'll watch a whole game and not notice Baron Browning. And then there are games you watch and you say, man, I like number 5. But there's a disconnect there. So much so that I just talked about this with Jamin Davis. They would take Baron Browning off the field, at times. Not as much as they would Pete Werner to get other guys on the field, but they would take him off the field sometimes. Not a playmaker. That, and probably best suited for an odd front. That's just me personally. That he could be drafted by a 4-3 team, and they could feel like he's a perfect fit for a Sam backer. I don't think he's a Will at all. I think he's more of a Sam, personally myself. But he's not a playmaker, man. He doesn't make a ton of plays. That play in the national championship game forcing a fumble, that's an anomaly for him. That's not generally what he's doing. I look at this guy and I lump him in with the rest of these Ohio State linebackers, and generally the range for them, Jerome Baker, Raekwon McMillan, Malik Harrison, is usually 2nd, 3rd round. Generally, that's where those guys go. To me, I see him as a 3rd or 4th round pick. I would personally not select him until the 4th round. But I could see somebody being enamored with him in Ohio State and saying, we got a spot for him. And if you tell me that you play a 3-4 and you're going to play him at inside linebacker as one of your mics, okay, I like that. I think that's the best fit for him at the next level, personally. But my comp for him is Raekwon McMillan. And I told you, I love low-hanging fruit when it comes to comps and the draft because it's easy. You can see how these players mirror each other and how universities recruit the same type of athletes. And I think he's just like Raekwon McMillan in this sense. You got to know who you're drafting. Raekwon McMillan was drafted by the Dolphins. They quickly realized this is not what we thought we were getting. He doesn't fit in what we're trying to do. They traded him to the Raiders this past offseason. I don't know if he's fitting in there either or not. But to me, Baron Browning's effectiveness is going to be dictated by where he's drafted. He goes to the right team, he could turn into a beast. He goes to the wrong team, and he could be bouncing from roster to roster and out of the league in 4 years. So, That's my Baron Browning breakdown. He's my number 10 linebacker in this draft. As we get to number 9. My number 9 linebacker is Dylan Moses, linebacker of the Alabama Crimson Tide. I told you I'm human. I know the rules to the game. I try to abide by them and play, but it's hard, man. I'm not going to lie to you. It's hard. Ohio State quarterbacks, Alabama linebackers, seen one, seen them all. I try not to do that because it's not fair to the player. He doesn't have anything to do with, Rashaan Evans or C.J. Mosley or, Reggie Ragland or Nico Johnson. He doesn't have anything to do with any of those guys. Don't put Sean Dion Hamilton on Dylan Moses. Got nothing to do with him. It's just hard to watch Alabama linebackers come into the league and be underwhelming over and over and over again and feel like, why is this guy going to be any different? That said, let's flip this card over and take a look at Dylan Moses. So, his strengths: athleticism. He can move. He has no problems getting around and maneuvering on a football field. Got no problems getting from point A to point B. He's an easy mover. He isn't a speed demon by any stretch of the imagination, but he's not hurting for movement skills. Closing speed. Again, one of my things with linebackers is, if you're unblocked, if you're untouched, I need you to be able to make a play. And the guys that are able to survive in this league, at a minimum, can survive because if they're unblocked, if they're untouched, they can make plays. There are times when John Bostic is untouched and he doesn't make the play. That's problematic. That'll have you out of the league in a heartbeat. He's not one of those guys. You don't worry about that with Dylan Moses. He gets a seam, a crease, a gap. He's going to hit it, and he's going to make a play. Attacks the line of scrimmage. Kind of goes hand in hand with me talking about his closing speed. He's a guy that is not bashful about approaching the line of scrimmage and trying to make something happen. He's going to come downhill. He's going to come downhill aggressively, and he's going to attack the line of scrimmage. If there's a crease there to be taken advantage of, he's going to do it. If it's not, he's going to try to find his way to the football, but he's going to attack the line of scrimmage. He can get skinny. He can turn his shoulders, make himself skinny to get into a hole. I like to call it slithering, to get inside and make a play. So that's another added benefit there. He can find the football, and he scrapes well. Remember I talked about Jamin Davis not scraping well, not finding his way through the traffic and sorting through garbage and getting to the ball. Dylan Moses can do that. He can find the football. He can scrape. He can get to wherever the ball carrier is trying to go. That ball carrier presses front side and then sticks his foot in the ground and cuts it back. Well, he can scrape. He can stop, change direction, scrape, and find him in the opposite A-gap. Physicality. Like I said, he comes downhill. He comes downhill aggressively. He plays with a level of physicality that I think is necessary of the position. It's a prerequisite. You need to be physical at the linebacker position. Those who aren't need not apply. Quality tackler. I've seen him miss. You notice it didn't say sure tackler. There's levels to this thing. He's a quality tackler. Seen him miss, though. More than I would like a guy of his stature missing. But for the most part, he gets guys on the ground. And he's got a really high-quality motor. Another thing that I really like to see. Because that doesn't require skill nor God-given ability and talent. That's a want to and effort. And he has that. Weaknesses. The first thing that jumps out at me for Dylan Moses, why he's so far down on my list, is I think he's a massive liability in coverage. You don't believe me? Turn on the Florida game in the SEC championship. They went after him. They went after him early. They went after him often. He picked up a couple of PIs. He gave up some stuff in the passing game. He just isn't a guy that I want running with a linebacker 25 yards down the field. There are guys that can do it, and then there are guys that can't. He can't. I saw one of the worst double moves I've ever seen in my life run by one of the Florida linebackers. He fell for it and picked up a PI. I just don't think he's comfortable on an island covering a running back. Good, not great speed. I don't think he's got difference-making, game-changing speed. I think he's fast enough to be a guy that is a starter in the NFL. I don't think he's got elite speed, though. Not the kind that makes you take a second look. Who was that? Damn, that 32 was flying. That's I don't feel that way about Dylan Moses. He's an Alabama linebacker. Again, I'm human. Shoot me. I'm guilty. I know I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't even bring this up. But I can't help myself. He's not Donta Hightower or C.J. Mosley. He's not even Reuben Foster. Those are all first-round linebackers. He's more Nico Johnson, Reggie Ragland, Ryan Anderson, Rashaan Evans. Evans is a first-round linebacker who I wasn't all that fond of. But the thing that I liked about Rashaan Evans is that he was a hell of a blitzer and could double as a guy off the edge. I don't think Tennessee's using him in that capacity, but whatever. He still falls in this long list of Alabama linebackers that have come into the league and underwhelmed. It all started with the first round pick the Raiders took once upon a time. I can't even remember his damn name. You know who the hell I'm talking about. And then finally, injury history. Look, he's not injury prone or anything like that, but he did miss the entire 2019 campaign with a torn ACL. It's on the Carfax. It's worth noting, and it's something to keep in mind. So for me, late day 2, early day 3. Again, these Alabama linebackers tend to go, much like Ohio State linebackers, tend to come off the board sooner rather than later. So more likely than not, he'll probably be a day 2 pick. I'm more on the fence. I wouldn't have a problem with him being a late 3rd, but I'm more of an early 4th round guy for Dylan Moses. And my comp, again, low-hanging fruit. I love to bite it this time of the year. I'll pick it right off the tree, and I won't even wash it off. I won't even rinse it off. I'm going to just bite it. Rashaan Evans is his comp. I hate the fact that these Alabama linebackers are trying to start a tradition with the number 32. It looks horrible for a middle linebacker. It makes you look slow. It makes you look unathletic. I hate the number on that position. But it is what it is. C.J. Mosley started it. It was then picked up by Rashaan Evans, who left it, and Dylan Moses then picked it up, and I bet you the next guy is going to pick it up. They're going to try to start a new middle linebacker tradition. They're getting drafted. But I hate it. But he looks like Rashaan Evans, man. I mean, literally, if you didn't tell me that this was 2020 tape, I would tell you that this was Rashaan Evans. And if I went back and watched it in 2018 and you said, hey, this is 2020, but I'm watching 2018, I said, oh, okay, that's Dylan Moses. I wouldn't be able to tell you the difference. They look exactly the same. The difference is one was a first round pick. This one is not going to be. And I can tell you right now, if Rashaan Evans was in this draft, he too would not be a first round pick. But I digress. Dylan Moses is my number 9 linebacker in this draft class. And again, that's not terrible in a deep linebacker draft class. I got a super chat that I need to get to, or two, as a matter of fact. I'm going to take them real quick. King of the North, thank you for your third super chat of the night. Might even be your fourth. Greatly appreciate you, King of the North, who writes, Ron was openly critical of the linebackers last year, so I expect a overhaul. Landon isn't a linebacker, but his blitzes and coverage are better than most linebackers. I'd love to see three safety packages next year with Landon Collins in the box. And I think you will see a ton of three safety looks because they want to get Cameron Curl on the field. They're going to be, at the end of the day, defense, much like offense, is about putting your best 11 on the field. And I think when it's all said and done, our best 11, depending on what we do with the linebacker position, obviously that does impact who your best 11 are. But as we sit here today, if major changes aren't made to the linebacker position, our best 11 features three safeties. Whomever's the free safety, Landon Collins and Cam Curl. So I think you're going to see a ton of three safety looks next year. And remember, before Landon got hurt, we were putting that big nickel package on the field quite a bit. And we were seeing the makings of what was going to be a breakout rookie campaign from Cam Curl. We were seeing the makings of that before the injury. So I think it's pretty safe to say that we're going to see a lot of three safety looks. And to your point, Ron was very critical of the linebackers. He did also then come back and say that they had played better as the season progressed, and they did get better, but I think that he understands. And remember, Ron himself, an ex-linebacker, Jack Del Rio himself, an ex-linebacker. I think they are dying to get a baller in there at middle linebacker. I do think that is something that they really want to do. So we'll see if they get that done or not. Got another super chat. This one is from John Saluter. Thank you for the super chat, John Saluter. Greatly appreciate you. And once again, I want to thank my man, King of the North, for that super chat as well. John Saluter writes, what would we have to do to get Zach Wilson? You'd have to give up a nice chunk of this year's draft and probably some of next year's too. Remember, in order to get Zach Wilson, more likely than not, probably going to have to give up you're probably going to have to get all the way up to number 2 or 3, more likely than not. I mean, he could go to the Jets. I anticipate that he will. The Jets are keeping all options open, as they should, but he's going to either be the first quarterback taken, number 1, which would be a surprise. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be the number 1 quarterback and number 1 pick overall in this draft. But I think Zach Wilson is the number 2 quarterback taken in this draft. And I don't think it's really close. I think he goes second. And if he doesn't, if for some reason the Jets decide that they want to roll with Sam Darnold and they want to build, they're either going to trade that pick or they're going to take a wide receiver because they need wide receiver help. And they're going to take the best one, and that's probably going to be Jamar Chase, and they're going to keep it rolling. And so then you look at 4 at the Falcons. And if he doesn't go 2, he's definitely going 4 to the Falcons, if you ask me. So that means you'd have to get all the way to number 3. So you're either going to have to get to number 2 or number 3. And to get from 19 to 2 or 3, and unlike when the Browns allowed the Falcons to come all the way from like 27 up to number, 4, 5, whatever it was to get Julio Jones. Julio! That was for a receiver. If I know you're coming up for a quarterback, I am absolutely going to beat your ass to death in terms of draft capital. You got to give it up. Punks come up to get beat down. You want to come all the way up here? You about to get beat down. Punks jump up to get beat down. You want to get to number 3? You want to get to number 2 from 19? I'm going to need your first this year. Obviously, you're going to swap out first. I'm going to need your second this year. I'm going to need your first next year. 2. And I might need one of your thirds you got. You got 2 3s this year? Let me get one of them too. So it's 2 1s, a 2, and a 3 more likely than not. It's going to take a lot. Might even take more than that. But I think that's where I think it starts. Is we swap out ones. I'm going to take your 2 this year because your 2 isn't very high. Remember, when we came back into the first round to get Montez Sweat, we had to give up the next year's 2. We gave up that year's 2 and the next year's 2, which was fine. You're going up 16 spots, possibly 17 to get a quarterback. You're probably going to have to give up this year's 1, next year's 1, this year's 2, maybe even next year's 2, and one of your 3s this year. You're going to have to give up a hell of a lot. So that's something to consider. Got another super chat. This is from my man, John Saluter. Again, double up. Thank you for doubling up, John Saluter. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, I can't get enough of Louie T this time of the year. I appreciate you, John. I really, truly do. Rolando McClain. Thank you, Baron Von Monkey. Rolando McClain was his name. The ex-Alabama first-round pick by the then Oakland Raiders that stunk it up in the league. So, yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about. Got another super chat. This one is from King of the North. Thank you for your 3rd or 4th, maybe 5th of the night. Really appreciate you, King of the North, as always. My man, King of the North, writes, what do you think about Chris Sims ranking Wilson over Lawrence? He also has Jones and Mons over Fields and Lance. Sims has good eye for QBs. I don't agree with his list. However, I don't have a problem with his 1 and 2. I told you that I could easily see how you could have Zach Wilson over Trevor Lawrence. Honestly, if we're just going off of pure talent, Zach Wilson is the more talented of the 2 quarterbacks. I don't even think it's close. But Trevor Lawrence has more of the it. Trevor Lawrence has the size. Trevor Lawrence has the athleticism. Trevor Lawrence is the complete package. And, oh, by the way, he played college football at its highest level and won. So you know that he doesn't panic nor fold in pressure-packed situations. Meanwhile, as I've laid out for you, Zach Wilson in some of his biggest games and against some of the best defenses he's seen, he struggled. Talked about the 2019 game against Utah. That's the NFL defense. That's Jalen Johnson at the cornerback position, a future 2nd-round pick. That's Bradley Anae, the future 5th-round pick of the Dallas Cowboys, coming off the edge. That's safety. I think he was a 2nd-round pick safety for the Indianapolis Colts. That was a hell of a player in his rookie season. That's another defensive tackle that was like a 4th-round pick, 4th, 5th-round pick. That's an NFL defense. He struggled. Threw 2 pick sixes in that game. In his biggest game in 2020 against Coastal Carolina, they got physical with him. They got physical. And his butt got a little tight. He puckered up a little bit. He struggled a little bit. That was a winnable game. So there's a little bit of pause there, but I don't doubt the talent. So I can understand why he's got him 1 and got Trevor Lawrence 2. It's everything thereafter that I just look at and say I don't agree with it. But he's an ex-quarterback. I respect his list. I don't agree with it. And I've talked about that already. Not tonight. I talked about that on another show. But I respect his list because anybody that puts in the work, this is a lot of work. It's a lot of hours. It's a lot of time. You put in the work, I respect whatever list you emerge from the wreckage with. I don't have to agree with it, and I don't. I don't think Kellen Mond is better than Trey Lance or Justin Fields. I don't think that's true. Mac Jones, He could ultimately be. You put him in the right system, behind an offensive line that's going to protect him. He might be the most accurate quarterback in this draft. You know, I don't know. I don't think Zach Wilson is more accurate than him. He's not too far behind, though. But you put Mac Jones in the right system, he may flourish. He could be Tom Brady 2.0. I'm not saying he's going to win, 6, 7 Super Bowls. That's not what I'm saying. But he could be that guy. But in today's NFL, I side with the guy that can extend plays. I side with the guys that look like Patrick Mahomes, that look like Russell Wilson, that look like Deshaun Watson, that look like Aaron Rodgers. I side with those guys before I do a guy that's immobile. So, and Kellen Mond can move. But Kellen Mond isn't an extend the play to throw and hurt you and break your back type of guy. When he extends, it's usually the run. I told you, Kellen Mond got a lot better. A lot better. So there is a little bit of that there, but I don't agree with 3 through 6 from Chris Sims. I don't. But I respect his list. I got another super chat. This next one is from Metaphor. Thank you for the super chat, Metaphor. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, "Yo, Lou, what up, Metaphor? Do we pick up Van Noy for the linebacker spot? Talked about that briefly earlier. I don't think they do. I wouldn't put it past them. If they want to go into the draft not having linebacker be something that they have to come away with, Van Noy becomes an option. But Van Noy is 29. I don't know if he fits in the time frame that they should have. I would say this. If we would have gotten Matthew Stafford, a guy like Kyle Van Noy then becomes much more attractive because you think you can win now. By not getting a veteran like Stafford, it suggests that you push that timeline back a year or two. So Van Noy for me doesn't make a ton of sense because by the time you're ready to win, he's 31. I don't really like that. Don't think that makes a ton of sense. I'd much rather go get the young guy, have him play for the next 2 years, and by the time we're ready to win, he's going into year 2 or 3 of his rookie deal. So he's going to be interesting. If he isn't traded and is ultimately released, he'll be interesting. He'll have a bunch of suitors. We'll probably be sniffing around. I don't know if we'll make a deal or not, an offer to him, but it'll be interesting if he's not traded and the Dolphins ultimately do release him. It'll be interesting to see if Washington is one of the teams that is after Kyle Van Noy. Calvin Krim, thank you for the super chat. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Calvin Krim. Greatly appreciate you. My man Calvin Krim writes, trading for number 2 is cheaper than Wilson or Watson. Yeah, it is. Trading for number 2 because those two are proven commodities in the league. You know what you're getting. Even if you trade for Zach Wilson and you think, you don't know. So by virtue of that, it's going to cost you a lot less than trading for a 25-year-old known commodity that we view as a superstar in this league in Deshaun Watson. You're going to have to pony up for that. Wilson won a Super Bowl, went to another. You know what you're getting. Top 3 quarterback in this league. You're going to have to pay for that. You could get Zach Wilson and he could turn out to be the reincarnation of Robert Griffin III, and he could ultimately stink. He's not. Okay, I can assure you of that. Now, injuries could play a part in the outcome of his career, but from a skill set standpoint, he is not Robert Griffin III. He's not going to fail just because he can't do it. So, 2 is definitely cheaper, but remember what we gave up to go and get Robert, and we were at 6, and we were only moving up to 2. Now, look at moving from 19 to 2 or to 3 and think about what that cost would be. Just think about that. And also remember, anytime you're trading into the top 5, and let's even narrow the focus, the top 3, you're going, like the top 3 picks in the draft are exponentially more expensive than the first 3 picks in the first round combined are probably worth more than the rest of the first round combined. Let that sink in for a second. The first, second, and third picks of the first round are probably more combined than the rest of, and I'm talking about from a draft value chart standpoint. I could be wrong. I guarantee you the first 5 picks combined are worth more than the rest of the first round combined. But I would venture to say the first 3 picks might be more than, if not the rest of the first round, the other 29 picks, at least 20 picks total combined. The next 20. So that's how big of a jump it is to get to 1, 2, or 3. And you're coming from 19 to make it even worse. So you've got to sweeten the deal to make a team say, not only am I going to trade you the number 2 pick in which you're going to spend on a quarterback, you're also asking me to trade out of the top 10. So I'm no longer getting an elite prospect myself. You're going to have to pay for that too. So I might be underestimating how much it costs. What I mentioned might just be the start of what it's going to cost to get in there. So when it's all said and done, it might be around the same thing, but I think Watson is more expensive than Wilson. Wilson is right there, and I think trading up to number 2 is just underneath both of those guys. I do believe that. So now we get to my number 8 linebacker in this draft, and it is Pete Werner. And this is a guy that kind of fits the Ohio State mold in terms of his size, 6'3", 242. But if you look at his body type, he doesn't look like the muscle-bound, physical specimen linebacker that we're accustomed to seeing out of Ohio State. I think he runs a little bit better than what we're accustomed to seeing out of Ohio State. He's more along the lines of a Jerome Baker than he is a Malik Harrison or Baron Browning or Raekwon McMillan. He runs better than those guys. He's more along the lines of a Jerome Baker, who was a 2nd-round pick. So I like Pete Werner. There's some things that I'm not all that too thrilled about, but let's flip this thing over and take a look at his card. So size and athleticism, 6'3", 242. Again, that's right in the sweet spot. If you're drafting a linebacker, that's what you're looking for. Size and ability to run. He's got both, good athleticism. I love his short area quickness. And again, remember I talked about Baron Browning and saying he didn't have short area quickness? Well, Pete Werner does, which is why I see him as a guy that could come in and immediately jump into some spot duty as a weak side backer, as a will for somebody. Come in right away and I think help. If he's smart and he can pick up the playbook and what you're doing, he's got the athleticism, the movement skills to be able to jump right in and help. Because I think he can move and navigate his way on the football field. Willingness at the point of attack. He'll take on blocks. At 242, he's not bashful. He's not shy. He'll come up. And again, he doesn't look 242. He looks like he's 227. So he's got that kind of frame that it looks like he could put on another 5 to 7 of muscle, honestly. But he got the willingness at the point of attack. Can shoot a gap. Again, I talked about the athleticism. I talked about his ability to show off some short area quickness. And you see it when he decides to shoot a gap. It's not often. I'd like him to be a little bit more aggressive. I feel like he's a bit of a passive defender, more of a, hey, let me do my job type of guy. I got outside contained, so I'm just going to stay out here where it's safe. I don't want to be the reason that we give up a 22-yard run, but you could also be the reason we get a 4-yard tackle for loss on this play if you just shoot your gun. But he's more on the safe side. I'll just stay out here. If he gets 4, but I stay outside, I feel more comfortable doing that than jumping inside and trying to cut this guy down before he gets going and tackle him for a 3-yard loss. I think he's capable. I mean, you see him at times, you go, that's the Pete that I want to see more of. You know, I'm watching him against Indiana, and I'm like, that's the Pete I want to see right there. In the backfield, 3-yard tackle for loss. I'm like, you can do that, bruh. You're capable. Sound tackler. Really, he's not an overly physical guy. He's more of a shoot your cuffs type of tackler, but that's cool. I don't really give a shit. Just get him on the ground. He does that consistently. Coverage ability. He's a guy that is comfortable in space. He's a guy that I'm not worried about running, 25 yards down the field. I feel comfortable that Pete Werner can do that. I don't want him doing that, but if pressed into action and if he has to do that, I'm not worried about him getting that done. I'm comfortable with his zone drops. I'm comfortable with him getting depth. I'm comfortable, as you see him in the picture, he's probably pursuing a running back, but that's the same kind of pursuit you want him getting in his drop. That's what you want right there. Eyes on the quarterback. As you get depth, you don't want a guy turning and running to grass. Versatility. I talked about his coverage ability. I talked about him being able to play over the slot. I talked about him being able to run out of the backfield with running backs. So there is a level of versatility that you get with Pete Werner. Durability. The guy's been a mainstay over the last 4 years at Ohio State. Doesn't miss many games, if at all any. So you know what you're getting. Didn't get lost in the sea of Ohio State linebackers. I talked about the same thing with Baron Browning, but I mean, you just got to think about it this way. Here's a white dude at a school that recruits a bunch of brothers that easily, if he doesn't step up to the plate, can have his job taken at any time. And I went down the list, but Raekwon McMillan, Jerome Baker, Malik Harrison, they had a kid, Justin Hilliard, that may get drafted this year at Ohio State as another guy that they would platoon in and out of the lineup. Baron Browning was in and out of the lineup in a fixture the last few years. Tuff Borland was another guy that they really were enamored with at the middle linebacker position. So you're talking about a bunch, and these are all over the life of Pete Werner's career at Ohio State. Since 2017, these are all guys that have come through there and played, either been drafted or about to be drafted into the NFL, with the exception of Tuff Borland or Justin Hilliard. Both of those guys, I think, ultimately may get drafted. Neither one of them could get drafted, but they're going to end up in somebody's camp. And so Pete was able to not only keep his head above water with all that competition, he was able to excel and stay on the field and be a fixture amongst all of those names. So that's impressive as well. And then I think he's a 3-down linebacker. I really think that this is a guy that you can put on the field all 3 downs. First, second, third. And you can get quality snaps out of him. He's a starter in this league. Weaknesses. Not a consistent shed or slip defender. I talked about his willingness to take on players at the point of attack, but I don't love his ability to get off of blocks or slip defenders or slip blockers, I should say. I don't love his ability to get on a block, get off a block, and make a tackle. He's a guy that you want clean. I think he's got to get better at consistently shedding blocks at the next level. One of the things I noticed in the games that I watched that was off-putting, very, very off-putting, is that he was constantly losing his luggage, meaning he was losing sight of his responsibility. If you're outside contained and they run a tight end sifting to your side across the formation, that's your responsibility. You got to run with that tight end. If they go play action fake and the running back crosses your face, that's your guy. You have to run with him. If you got bootleg and the tight end in front of you is your guy and the quarterback comes out, just because the quarterback rolls out to your side doesn't mean you turn down your responsibility to chase quarterback. I don't know why it is that he constantly is losing his luggage, but I can't tell you how many times I'm watching him and his guys running unimpeded up the sideline, and Pete turns around and goes, "Oh shit, that's my guy." Yeah, Pete, that is your guy, and he's 15 yards up the field and you're nowhere to be found. What are you doing? So he's got to be more disciplined in that regard. No defining trait. Like, nothing he does stands out. Nothing he does stands out and makes you say, okay, this is why I got to have this guy. Now, he's really solid in a bunch of areas, like the guy I comped him to. And those guys hang around and those guys make a difference. They're key cogs in defenses. But there is no definitive trait. And he's not a playmaker. You know, he blends in with your defense. Again, Blake Martinez isn't necessarily a playmaker, but he makes a bunch of tackles and he does what you ask him to do. You need those guys on your defense too. And, but again, he doesn't stand out. I got a late day 2, early day 3 grade. I'm more of a 4th round guy on Pete Werner. I think he's going to go in the 3rd round personally. I'm more of a 4th round guy on Pete Werner. I think he's going to go in the 3rd round. My comp for him is Joe Schobert, the ex-Wisconsin linebacker drafted by the Cleveland Browns. I thought at times was exceptional for the Browns. Got a nice contract from Jacksonville in free agency last offseason. Good linebacker in this league is Joe Schobert. I see a lot of the same qualities with Pete Werner. Joe Schobert has a little bit of a playmaking knack, though. I'd like to see Pete Werner develop some of that. If he can do that, he'll fit right into that Joe Schobert type of mold at the next level. So those are my linebackers. Still got a few more that I'm going to take a look at before this process is over with. Charles Snowden of Virginia. I want to take a look at him closer. You've got the Rice kid from Georgia, as I mentioned last night. I want to take a look at him. You know, you got Patty Fisher. I want to take a look at Wallow from TCU. So there's a few more guys. I told you it's a really deep class of linebackers. So we're not done, but those are my top 11 linebackers to this point. It could change. I could see one of these guys that I haven't watched yet, and they could infiltrate the top 11. But as of right now, that's how my list looks to this point. So with that said, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Wow, I did not realize that it is past midnight. But again, that's what happens when you're having fun. Time flies when you're having fun. And I have fun. I always have fun with you guys, and I really do appreciate you guys chopping it up with me. If you haven't already done so, please hit the like button. 290 of you. We've got 250 likes. I love it. Want more of it. If we can get it up to 260 before it's all said and done, I greatly appreciate you guys. If you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do so. And also, hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. With that said, I'm going to glide to the side and allow you to enjoy the rest of your evening, or what's left of it. It's midnight here on the East Coast. Damn it, man. Where did the time go? But in any event, I'll allow you to get out of here. I've talked enough. You're probably tired of me at this point. So I thank you guys who started at 8:30 with me and are still here at midnight. Really appreciate you. And for those of you who jumped in at some point, thank you to you as well. Greatly appreciate you. With that said, thank you guys for joining me. I will see you guys in the near future. Take care. God bless and good night.
Louie.